Welcome back to the channel. This is Traitor Storm and you are watching second part of What If Naruto Became Shinigami-Hollow Hybrid. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Tower of Hokage. It would be an understatement to say that Tsunade was furious. She was astounded that the shinobi she dispatched to pursue Mizuki would even try to murder her grandson in order to aid the now deceased traitor. She was also upset that Sasuke Uchiha had discovered Naruto's former condition and had broken the law. At this point, she wanted nothing more than to beat the jerk into paste. Itachi and Naruto were in the tower at the moment. However, Shisui was keeping an eye on Sasuke at the Uchiha police force headquarters to make sure he didn't do anything foolish. Itachi, the actions your brother committed tonight were very serious. Not only has he stolen the Forbidden Scroll, but he also knows one of Konoha's greatest secrets, and that is Naruto being the container of Kyuubi. Not only that, but he attempted to cause physical harm to the last survivor of the Namikaze clan. She said with an air of seriousness as the clan head nodded in agreement. Itachi asks the female Senju, who raises an eyebrow, "Yes, I know Hokage Sama, and I am asking you that I be the one that deals out his punishment, since his actions will also affect me and my clan's reputation." "I can understand that much, but do you realize that Sasuke could and probably will lose his shinobi license over this event, and he'll more than likely be doing some prison time?" she says, and Itachi nods. Since his father and the previous Elder Council were accountable for their clan's devaluation, Itachi suggests, "Yes, I know, but perhaps we can come to some form of compromise, Hokage Sama. He wants to settle this dispute amicably so as not to destroy the little dignity his clan still possesses in the village." Since Tsunade knew Itachi was one of the few Uchiha who wasn't conceited and didn't think he was superior to the others in terms of status and rank, she asked, "A compromise? What did you have in mind?" Because it astounded them that someone so young could be so mature. He was recognized and respected by his peers, particularly the more seasoned ninja. "I would suggest one where he is to be put on probation in the village for at least 5 months, and he will not be allowed to do any missions outside of the village until you deem him and whatever team he's on ready," he said as she thought about this. "I know the punishment may seem light, in your opinion, but like I said earlier, I will be giving him my form of punishment and show him the errors of his ways. Trust me when I say that what I'm requesting will be an act of mercy compared to what I have planned for my little brother," he said while his Sharingan eye flashed for a moment. The expression in Itachi's eyes left Tsunade and Naruto unsure of whether to feel sorry for Sasuke. With some of his clan members serving as examples, Tsunade witnessed firsthand how vicious Itachi could be. When Itachi took over as the clan's new leader a few years ago, some police officers wanted to exact revenge on their former fallen leader, but instead Itachi beat them nearly to death, sealed their eyes, publicly humiliated them, sent them to prison, and expelled them from the Uchiha clan. Itachi demonstrated why he was the new clan leader that day by declaring that he would not put up with their behavior and forewarning the others that he would deal with them directly if they attempted anything. Tsunade, however, smirked after giving this some thought. Tsunade asked her godson, Naruto, "Well, since you put it that way, then fine. I'll let you deal with Sasuke personally, Itachi." "Naruto, do you have anything to say since this does concern you in a way?" He tapped his finger on his chin for a while before shrugging. As she started to perspire, he said pleasantly, "Nope, I'm good." Itachi, however, arched an eyebrow. The Namikaze heir shook his head once more when Itachi asked, "Are you sure, Naruto-san? You don't want any form of compensation for what my brother has done?" "I assure you, Itachi-san, I am fine. Besides, it's not your fault. Sasuke did what he did and he should pay for his actions, not the entire clan. For now I'm giving him a warning, but should he pull something like this again, then I will have no other choice but to result in using alternative methods," Naruto responded with a serious voice. Itachi gives a nod and gets to his feet. He exits the office after saying, "Well then, I should be on my way back to the police station to have a discussion with my foolish little brother." With a sigh, Tsunade takes out a bottle of sake. She gave him a fierce look when he said, "You know, Kyobu, you shouldn't drink so much, especially at your age." She said in jest, "Shut up and go home, you troublesome brat." The blonde raises an eyebrow as she takes off Naruto's hat and the necklace with the green gem on it, saying, "And congratulations in becoming Rookie of the Year." She ties it around his neck and says, "Think of this as your graduation gift from me, Naruto. My grandfather's necklace." On the other hand, Naruto gives his godmother a kind smile. After putting his hat back on, he stands up and says, "Thanks. I'll be sure to take good care of this." His godmother was left stunned and perplexed when Naruto said, "Oh, and the secret to beating all that god-awful paperwork is the Kage Bunshin." She finally woke up from her daze and became enraged. She glanced at the picture of the man on the wall and remarked, "So that bastard Minato got all his paperwork done." As she poured herself a glass of wine, she remarked, "If only you were here to see how these people treated your son since the day he was born. Luckily 4 people came and changed all that. I hope you and Kushina are having a great time in heaven." The following day selections for the Shinobi Academy team. As Naruto was speaking with Hinata, Yakumo, and Mikoto, Iruka had just begun to call out the teams. Naruto prayed to himself that he wasn't on a team with Sasuke, Kiba, or Sakura because the 3 of them didn't like him for obvious reasons. "So who do you think will be on teams? Hopefully I will have one of you as teammates." Mikoto asserted, "Yeah, same here. Last night Sasuke got into some serious trouble with Itachi.ni and Ka.san. She mentioned something about Sasuke pulling a stupid stunt that involves a traitor wanting to steal a certain scroll and you Naruto.kun," she said as the blonde raised his eyebrows. Said Uchiha appeared to have had his favorite toy stolen as he sat in a distant corner away from the majority of the other students. In addition, he appeared to be unhappy and had some patches on his face and a few faded bruises. "Yeah, but I can't tell you girls on account that it's a top secret that is punishable by death if revealed to those unaware. Luckily your brother was spared from death by Itachi.san by the request of the Hokage," he responded and the girl nodded. Iruka then raised her voice. His eyes, like those of everyone else in the classroom, widened as he responded, "Team 6 will be Mikoto Uchiha, Yakumo Kurama, and Naruto Namikaze." "You're the son of the Yondaime? How come you never told us?" replied Yakumo. As Naruto explained, he noticed that all of Sasuke's fangirls were now glaring at him and that he was perspiring. "I couldn't since my dad has made a lot of enemies that would love nothing more than to kill me to get back at him for what he and my mom did during the last war. That and he had some enemies inside the village as well." When Hinata, Yakumo, and Mikoto saw this, their responses varied. In a fit of wrath, Hinata snarled and used her Byakugan. Mikoto followed suit, using her fully developed Sharingan and glaring menacingly at the fangirls as a shadowy image of a smiling demon appeared behind her and a dark aura surrounded Yakumo. The 3 kunoichi in training thought, "Stay away from our Naruto. Kun you sluts," and appeared prepared to rip these weaklings who identify as kunoichi to shreds. These girls' reactions made them cower in terror and turn away from the Namikaze heir. Iruka, on the other hand, had a big drop of sweat on the back of his head. "Okaya," he said, waking up from his daze. "Anyway," he concluded, "Team 6's sensei will be Yuga Uzuki." Sasuke's eyes widened in shock when he saw his sister reveal her fully mature Sharingan, Copy Wheel Eye, and he became envious, wondering how she did it while he, the older of the 2, did not, and whether Itachi had secretly trained her to acquire their clan's bloodline. When Yakumo and Mikoto found out they were going to be paired with their crush, their eyes glowed, but Hinata was saddened. The blonde teen gave her a shoulder pat and a pitying look, and a melancholy smile appeared on her face. "Sasuke Uchiha, Kiba Inuzuka, and Sakura Haruno will make up Team 7. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki," he concluded, wincing in agony as Haruno screamed that love would triumph over all. "Stop talking." The girl sobbed and shrank in her chair as Mikoto and Yakumo shouted while using Iruka's demon head jutsu. "Team 8 will be Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga, and Sai Shimura," Iruka said after coughing once more. He replied, "Your sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi." Hinata sighed with relief because she didn't want to be on the same team as the perverted Inuzuka. She didn't have any problems with Shino because the bug user was a close friend of hers, and she didn't have any problems with Naruto. Sai, on the other hand, was a mystery because she thought his behavior was strange. Since Team 9 is still in session, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Shoji Akamichi will make up Team 10. He concluded, "Your sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi." Ino, on the other hand, slammed her head against the desk, shedding anime tears as she wondered why Kami had abandoned her. Although she wasn't as much of a fan as Sakura, she did have a crush on Naruto, but not to the same extent because she trained with Hinata, Mikoto, and Yakumo whenever she could. He left the room after saying, "Your senseis will be here any second now and I wish you all luck in your shinobi career." A few minutes later, a female Junin entered, dressed in an Enbu version of the Leaf Junin outfit with a katana strapped to her back. She was 5 feet 5 and looked to be in her early 20s, with ivory skin, waist length purple hair, and deep brown eyes. Group 6. "I'm Yuga Uzuki, meet me outside the front of the academy," she yelled, and Naruto, Mikoto, and Yakumo raised their hands. "Hang on ladies." Naruto grinned and put an arm around Mikoto's and Yakumo's waists, causing them to squeak in surprise. He then shunposed with them out of the academy, shocking everyone in the room and making Sasuke growl in rage. Disband the academy. Hello sensei. Naruto said, causing Yugo's eyes to pop open. She turned to see the bucket hat, wearing Genin and two blushing kunoichi behind her. Yugo was standing outside with her arms crossed and her eyes closed when Naruto appeared behind her with Yakumo and Makoto, who were now blushing because his hands were around their waists. She questioned, how does he know Shunshin, and when did they get behind me? I couldn't even sense them. She raised an eyebrow as Naruto answered, you're probably wondering if I used Shunshin to appear behind you, and the answer is no. What was it if it wasn't Shunshin? The blonde smiled as she asked. A technique my Ka-san taught me called Shunpo, which means flash step, and it's way better than the Shunshin jutsu, replied Naruto. He laughs as she says, I've never heard of this Shunpo technique. Naruto responded, and his teacher nodded, that's because it's a clan technique and only me and my family know how to use. I understand. All right, then follow me to Training Ground 6, she said, gesturing for them to do so. Field of Training 6. Now that this is my first time serving as a sensei to the current graduates, what do you all think we start by introducing ourselves? Yugo was leaning against a tree and looking at her students, who she could tell were prepared to face the challenges of the shinobi lifestyle. They nod in agreement as she asks, all right, then I'll get started first. I'm Yugo Azuki, a former captain of Anbu Black Ops. I enjoy the sword arts, my comrades, Kurenai, Anko, and Hana, as well as my best friend and fellow swordsman Gekko Hayate. Perverts, traitors, and those who lack honor or regard for the fallen are among the things I detest. Sword collecting, lounging in hot springs, and nighttime moongazing are some of my pastimes. Being the best female kenjutsu master in Konoha is my dream, she concluded. She pointed to Naruto, who nodded, and said, now you three can go ahead and we'll start off with you. All right, then. He introduced himself as Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and Yugo's eyes widened at the last names. My other likes are ramen, dango, my family and godparents, and sparring with my uncle and mother in kenjutsu and taijutsu, he said teasingly, causing Makoto and Yakumo to blush a little and turn away as Hinata suddenly sneezed and wondered who was referring to her at Training Ground 8. Yakumo and Makoto were drawn to his icy statement, which said, I dislike traitors, people who fear things they don't understand, short-sighted and conceited people who think they are above others just because of their name or bloodlines, and to a certain old monkey who lied to me my entire life. I like to work out, go swimming, play flash tag with my mom, make explosives with my aunt, who has a fetish for blowing things up, and invent new gadgets and seals with my dad. As a tiny smile appeared on Yugo's lips, he concluded, at this time, my goal is to establish a new clan and become a great ninja and warrior like my biological and adoptive parents. She turned to face Yakumo, who nodded, and said, very good now you. All right, I'm Yakumo Kurama, the heiress of the Kurama clan's main branch. My favorite people are my parents, my best friends Hinata, Chan and Makoto, Chan, and Naruto-kun. I dislike arrogant people, perverts, and people who believe that women aren't capable of being ninja. Painting, making my own genjutsu, cooking, and gathering various flowers are some of my pastimes. Being a great genjutsu master like Kurenai Yuhi is my dream, she concluded. Yugo looked at Makoto and remarked, very good, and lastly you. My name is Uchiha Makoto. My other likes are my mother, strawberries, Naruto-kun, and hanging with my friends, she said, causing Naruto and Yakumo to snicker and Makoto to give them a playful glare. My likes are fire, my older brother Itachi, and my cousin Shisui, Poki. Getting a nod from Yugo and Yakumo, she responded, I dislike fangirls because they give us real kunoichi and civilian women a bad name, as well as most of my clan members, my late father, and my other brother Sasuke because he acts so much like dad. With a smile on her face, she said, my hobbies are making tea, training with my Oni-san, gardening, and playing with fire. Naruto was the first to speak up, and Yugo looked at the two and raised an eyebrow. Makoto. Chan is a pyromaniac who has had a strong fetish for fire since she was 6 years old. Makoto blushed and sheepishly rubbed the back of her head as Naruto responded, on one occasion, she actually set one of the academy's labs on fire while playing with the Bunsen burner, and we had to get 4 of the classes repaired. You were the one who started that academy fire, right? As one of the few Anbu who had to assist in extinguishing the flames and putting out one of the burning chunin, Yugo inquired. She finished right away, and the sword mistress shook her head. Oh yeah, my dream is to become a great ninja like my brother and become an Anbu Black Ops Taicho. While Makoto's and Yakumo's eyes widened and Naruto appeared uninterested, she said, "Now that the introductions are over, you three are gonna have to go through a test to see if you're qualified to officially become genin." As he adjusted his hat slightly, Naruto remarked, "HMPH, I figured as much." "Really? Naruto, would you mind educating us?" Yugo inquired, and the blonde swordsman smiled. "Yes. The graduation test was far too simple to start. The second is the team setup, where the Jonin Sensei, who serve as the team captains, assess our strengths and weaknesses and determine whether we can work as a cohesive unit, which is what the village's ninja are known for." The three females were left perplexed when Naruto explained that the failure rate is approximately 66.6%, meaning that only a small number of teams will pass and those who don't will be sent back to the academy or removed from the shinobi program entirely. Naruto raises an eyebrow and blinks a couple of times, asking, "What, does my face have something on it?" Yugo sighs as he asks. "Thankfully, you're correct." In a serious tone, she turned the timer a couple of times and put it down. "Now then, you will have 2.5 hours to capture me, and I suggest you come at me with the intent to take my life. I personally have to test you all and see if you have what it takes to be actual ninja," she said, pushing herself off the tree and gesturing for them to follow her in the open field. Yugo retreated a few steps and took a timer out of her weapons pouch. "Are all three of you ready?" "Okay, then the test begins at NOW," she asks, and they nod. She yelled, and the three immediately disappeared from her view. The forest, while hiding behind some big bushes, Naruto, Yakumo, and Makoto were devising a strategy. "So we have 2.5 hours to capture our sensei, but something tells me it won't be easy," Makoto said. "It won't, of course. Like your brother, Yugo. Sensei was formerly a part of the Anbu Black Ops. Even if we attacked at the same time, none of us could possibly surprise her. That is, if we were just any other genin squad," Naruto said, his eyes gleaming, drawing the girl's attention. "Don't you have a plan?" Naruto laughs and nods in response to Yakumo's question. He responded, "Yep, and you two are gonna play the biggest roles." He then started outlining his strategy. "You know Naruto-kun, revealing your presence to the enemy so early is not a good sign," Yugo said as Naruto appeared a few feet away from her. Yugo was standing in the center of the field with her arms folded over her chest and her eyes closed. "Maybe you made a mistake by winning Rookie of the Year," she said, hoping to agitate him and cause him to lose concentration. Blonde laughs and smirks as he responds, "Perhaps, but you would be wise to take me seriously, Yugo. Sensei, or should I say Neko. I'm glad you remember me. What was the clue?" Naruto lowered his hat in response to her question. "The way your hair and voice sound. I suggest you take me seriously, Sensei," Naruto says, placing his right hand on the hilt and his left hand on Injetsu's sheath. "I'm pretty sure you heard the story about me defeating Mizuki and a few shinobi who wanted to kill me, right? I don't just carry these swords around for show." She nods when he asks. Naruto began to laugh, but not in a positive way, as she said, "Yes, but I honestly thought most of it was exaggerated since I find it hard to believe that a newly graduated could kill several experienced Chunin and Jonin. To be honest, you wouldn't be the first person to doubt those facts." As he began to slowly extract Injetsu from its sheath, Yugo chuckled and said, "Honestly, Naruto-kun, I'm a specialist in Kenjutsu. I guess I have no other choice but to show you." "Really, do you think you can fight me out of all people?" "It's unfortunate that you never met my parents, or my aunt and uncle for that matter," she said, with a savage grin on Naruto's face that resembled Kenpachi's just before a fight. "You would be regretting crossing paths with me at this moment if you had. In addition, you instructed me to approach you with the intention of killing you," he said, "Big mistake," and drew Injetsu in. Yugo was unnerved by the expression in his eyes, which were not those of a green genin but rather those of a skilled warrior, and she had to suppress a shiver that ran up her back. As she watched Naruto spin Injetsu a few times before the silver blade gleamed in the sunlight, she thought, "Something tells me that I should take this seriously or I'll end up losing a limb." "Can't you see it, Sensei?" As Yugo blinked in bewilderment, Naruto said, "You can see my blade's desire to kill you." His final words were serious, and her eyes widened. Then, abruptly, Naruto disappeared, emerging behind her, crouching down with his blade ready to split Yugo in two. The female swordsman slowly turned her head to see Naruto behind her, saying, "He's fast." Clang. The former Anbu member was unnerved by Naruto's cool, stone, hard face as he said, "I thought I told you to take me seriously," as Injetsu and Yugo's specially made katana Tsukihime, Moon Princess, clashed and ground against one another. "Why do you continue to hold back?" Calmly asking, Naruto stared to push her back, but to her astonishment, he only used one arm. Sweet Kami. How can he be this fast and strong? I knew he was Rookie of the Year, but this is the second time he's caught me off guard. Maybe I shouldn't have told him to come at me with the intent to kill. Yugo skids back a few feet as he uses the strength behind the blade to push her back. Her eyes widened even more when she saw the blade descend towards her head, and she reflexively blocks it, but the impact leaves a small crater beneath her feet. Naruto began to launch a barrage of swords, but Yugo parried and avoided the majority of them, putting her on the defensive. In the meantime, the Kurama heiress turns to see Makoto, who was standing next to Yakumo and placing a hand on her shoulder as she watched in amazement as Naruto engaged their sensei in a kenjutsu match. Yakumo never imagined Naruto was this strong. The traps have been set up. Yakumo nods as the female Uchiha jumps away, and she says, "Give Naruto-kun the signal once he's clear." Whoever trained this kid in kenjutsu must have been one hell of a teacher. He managed to nick me a couple of times and some of those attacks would have done more than that, Yugo thought, still on the defensive from Naruto's onslaught, and she sustained a few cuts on her sleeves and flak jacket before finding herself with her back against a tree and cursing to herself. Using this as an opportunity, Naruto slashed diagonally, seemingly slicing a horrified Yugo in half before she puffed away, exposing a cut log, and the tree he had sliced through collapsed with a loud crash. Kawarimi ha! After saying that, he turned to look around and noticed a few flashes coming from a distant tree. Yakumo was flashing her headband at the moment, and Naruto was grinning. "All right," he exclaims, "now phase 2 begins," and leaves the field. Yugo was sighing with relief from behind a big bush. "But I have to admit he's good," she said, muttering in a smile. That was too close. As she lands, she feels something tug back under her ankle and looks down to see some ninja wire. "He'd probably give even Hayate a run for his money," she says, abruptly leaping to her feet and leaping away because a volley of kunai ascended towards her and struck the spot she was previously at. A volley of shuriken, kunai, and senbons shoot from the trees as she hears something snap. She jumps out of the trap and onto a tree branch, but as she hears something sizzling, she looks down and her eyes widen as she sees multiple exploding tags light up and sizzle. Whoa! When half of the tree exploded, she screamed and shunshins away. A blocked blur appeared behind her, and it was Makoto with her leg back. Yugo blocked the kick with her forearm out of pure reflex, and Makoto stopped it, grabbed Yugo's sleeve, and used it to lift herself off the ground and into the air with her leg raised. She brought it down, but Yugo caught it with her hand, grabbed the girl by the arm, and threw her off. When Hikari stopped at the tiger seal and took a breath, Makoto flipped her body and landed back on her feet before beginning to perform some hand seals at Chunin level speeds, making Yugo's eyes pop out. There's no way she can perform hand seals at that speed in elemental jutsu, she thought. Did Itachi teach her? She exhaled and hurled a fireball at Yugo, saying, "Kaden. Gokyaku no Jutsu. Fire release. Grand fireball technique." The sword mistress cursed and performed a few hand seals. Suiden Teppodama, water release. Gunshot. She shoots a condensed ball of water at the fireball, and when the blows hit each other, they cancel each other out, and steam forms all around. As the fog clears, Yugo realizes Makoto is no longer there and cannot sense her, which is when a skeletal hand emerges from the ground and grabs her ankle. Yugo's face is filled with surprise as more hands reach out for her body and she sees skeletons creeping out of the ground. Genjutsu. She brought her hands together in a ram seal and said, "Nice try, Yakumo-san." Kai. To her relief, the skeletons began to ripple away, but the area around her began to form into a pair of red eyes with 3 tomo encircling a pupil and spinning quickly. "Unreal," she said as she watched the eyes vanish, and the next thing she knew, she was impaled by black pikes. She let out a grunt and tentatively put her hands in a ram seal. "Kai," she called out, and the illusion instantly dispelled. She breathed a sigh of relief and shook whatever cobwebs she had in her head out. A strong dual-layered genjutsu. To do something like that, a lot of skill is required. She smiled and remarked, "Apparently, I got a strong bunch." A voice said, "Indeed." She turned to see Naruto eating an apple while perched on a tree branch, then throwing the apple away after he was done. "That was pretty amazing," she said. "Doing that kind of double layered genjutsu. However, Yakumo Chan comes from a line of genjutsu masters and inherited their Kekkei Genkei, which is a powerful form. Considering the clan she comes from, Makoto is the same in genjutsu," he said, tossing the core aside. "I think we need to end this little fiasco, so I'm sorry if I cut this game of hide and seek short." Naruto says, while I'm not that skilled in genjutsu like they are, I can use them properly, but I'm more of a fighter. He holds up his hand, and a golden spark forms in it, slowly growing and forming around it. Yugo raised an eyebrow at this, wondering what he was doing. What the former Anbu says, and then he begins to form the golden outline of an upside down triangle, with 3 fang-like beams forming around the corners. Before Yugo could do anything, a pair of hands emerged from the ground and grabbed her ankles. Yakumo then appeared behind Yugo, made a few hand gestures, and slammed them onto the ground. A wall of earth materialized in front of her as she yelled, "Doden! Doryuheki!" Makoto, who was underground, let go of Yugo's ankles as he said, "Bakudo no Sanju. Shidotsu Sansen." The next thing Yugo knew, the beams of light had pinned her to the earth wall, 2 of them pinning her arms and 1 pinning her torso. While Makoto was being pulled out of the ground by Naruto, who also said that Uchiha had dusted off her clothes, Yakumo walked around the wall of earth she had made. Naruto said, tilting his hat up, "You forgot to mind your surroundings, sensei." "Well, it looks like the test is over and you 3 a pass." Yugo sighs as the alarm goes off, but then a smile appears on her face. Makoto and Yakumo applaud and glomp Naruto. "Now, would you both be so kind as to get me out of this?" The binding spell breaks when Naruto snaps his fingers and smiles. Since teamwork is what we're known for, that was the test's actual meaning. "You 3 show a lot of promise, so I would have passed you even if you hadn't caught me. Team 6 is now formally recognized." She congratulated them, knowing that her team would succeed in their shinobi career. Tsunade was moaning to herself as she listened to the reports on the current teams at the Hokage Tower. The majority of them had failed thus far. She was able to alter the Shinobi Academy after removing the council and minimizing their influence, particularly when she asked the instructors to clarify the real facets of shinobi life and what to anticipate when performing missions. The majority of the civilian parents were unhappy about this and complained to Tsunade about it, but the female Hokage disregarded their objections in order to teach them about the harsh life of a shinobi and to tell them that if they didn't want their children to risk their lives for their own safety, then they had no right to serve under her rule. She knew that most of those students believed they would be hailed as heroes, but she stopped that in its tracks when she instructed the headmaster and instructors to be realistic and not sugarcoat anything shinobi wise, which pleased the active or veterans. To the dismay of the civilians and 2 advisors, who thought that shinobi should simply accept their injuries and move on, she was also able to launch the new medical program she was working on to lower the number of shinobi casualties. However, they were powerless to stop her because she showed no influence at all, unlike her former sensei, and those who spoke out were fired and had a 1-on-1 meeting with Ibiki. Tsunade and the other Jonin turned to Yugo, who was grinning, after Genma, a Jonin, claimed that his team had failed. The Slug Sanin and Itachi, who had chosen to come and hear how his younger siblings fared, had curious expressions on their faces as Yugo said, "Team 6 passes Hokage." "Sama." Tsunade said, "Really? Care to enlighten us on how they did?" "Well, to be honest with you, Hokage Sama, they went even beyond my expectations as I didn't expect them to be this good." The sword mistress replied. Naruto-kun was the first to start the evaluation off by engaging me in a kenjutsu match. Tsunade said, "Oh, and what did you think of his kenjutsu skill-wise?" as Yugo rubbed the back of her neck and gave her a sheepish smile. Yugo was one of the most prominent sword users in the village, aside from Hayate, so they were all staring at her when she said, "Whoever trained him in kenjutsu was a master. Even when I was his age I was never that skilled with a sword and he even managed to get a few hits on me even though I held back, but something told me he did too. It is simply astounding that a graduate and rookie of the year could pull off such a feat." Tsunade said, "I see, so what about the other 2? Makoto Uchiha is without a doubt very cunning. During my battle with Naruto-kun, she started to set up a few traps in order to catch me off guard. Afterwards, she managed to perform a Kaiden jutsu and hand seals which matched the level of a Chunin, forcing me to use a water jutsu to stop the attack, creating a dense fog. She managed to disappear in the fog, and during that time Yakumo took the opportunity to create a genjutsu while I was distracted. I made an attempt to dispel it, but apparently Makoto managed to assist her by creating a dual-layered genjutsu with her Sharingan and forced me to input more chakra in order to dispel it since it was at least on par with a B-ranked genjutsu," she clarified as they listened struck. "And finally they managed to capture me. Naruto-kun created a strange jutsu that appeared to be based off of light, and Makoto and Yakumo took this opportunity to use 2 earth-based jutsu. Makoto used the Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu, double suicide decapitation technique, to bind my legs and keep me from escaping, and Yakumo summoned a Doryuheki, earth mud wall. while Naruto used a technique he called Shidotsu Sansen, beak-piercing triple beam, to pin me to the earth wall and successfully caught me before the time ran out. She finished and every Jonin stunned. Itachi, on the other hand, was astonished by his younger sister's growth and couldn't help but smile. He planned to congratulate her on her accomplishments. He was teaching her some chakra control exercises when she was 6 years old, and one of them involved channeling chakra into her eyes, ears, and nose to increase her senses. When she concentrated too much on her eyes, she ended up activating her Sharingan, but she kept it a secret from Fugaku and Sasuke. Itachi would guide her through the various Sharingan levels and their appropriate usage during those periods. In addition, he taught her how to control her emotions and posture, stay one step ahead of her opponents, and fight like him, especially against stronger and more seasoned opponents. However, when Kakashi heard how talented Itachi's Imouto and his sensei's child were, he whistled in awe. The man said, "You seem to have a really interesting team, Yugo." Yugo said to her former captain, "Thank you, senpai." The man started to perspire when she asked, "Now how did your team do? Did you fail them like you did the last ones?" She raised her eyebrows in response to his response, no." The man rubbed the back of his head and she said, "So they passed?" He saw that they wanted an explanation, so he replied, "Yes and no. Yes, they passed because they in a sense understood the quality of teamwork, but they failed in the performance." Sasuke was arrogant and apparently has taken the lone wolf attitude and believes that his other teammates would slow him down. He explained, which caused Itachi to frown and sigh. Sakura is a fangirl who thinks Sasuke is her knight in shining armor and she passed out from an E-ranked genjutsu. She may have book smarts, but she lacks the physical concepts that shinobi need. Not only that, but she is loud, short-tempered, and reacts violently to anyone that insults Sasuke. He responded with a torrent of sweat. Kiba apparently is also loud, brash, and cocky and is also impatient, not planning any of his moves and attacking without eyeing his surroundings since he got caught in academy-level traps. He continued. He concluded, crying in his head and wondering what higher power he had offended. But they do show some potential, and if they can get their heads out of their backside, then they would be an excellent combat squad. Tsunade told those who passed their teams to be prepared for missions by tomorrow after learning that the other genin had failed and passed. She also warned Kakashi not to be late or she would have Kurenai burn his books, which made the man shudder in terror. Tsunade stopped Yugo just as she was ready to go. As the others departed, Yugo nodded but blinked when she said, "Hold on, Yugo, I need to speak to you for a moment." The woman's eyes widened in surprise as she said, "Yugo, I think your genin squad is the most qualified to start off doing circa ranked missions." The curvaceous woman sneered when she said, Really, Hokage? Sama? I mean, what about them working on their teamwork skills? Yugo, those three including Hinata have known each other since they were little and I know they trust each other with their lives. Not only that, but Naruto is very protective of them and will crush anyone who tries to harm a hair on their head. Plus those D ranks will only be a waste of time since they're mostly used to improve teamwork, she clarified as Yugo smiled and pondered the Shishunshuns out of the office after saying, "Very well then, Hokage. Sama. My team will report here for their first circa ranked mission tomorrow." Clan compound Uchiha Mikoto had just opened the slide door and taken off her sandals, when Mikoto yelled, "Ka-san, Oni-san, I'm home." Her mother smiled and peered out of the kitchen. When the young woman Uchiha entered the kitchen, she saw Itachi sitting at the table sipping green tea. "Hello, Mikoto. Chan, come on in, I've got some snacks on the table." Mikoto said, "Hey, Oni-san." The current clan head grinned slightly as he glanced up at his younger sister. He said, "Hello, Imouto. I take it you passed your sensei's test?" And she gave him a hearty nod. She said, receiving a nod from Itachi, "Yes, but it was thanks to Naruto-kun. He came up with the idea on how to catch our sensei." Her eyes widened as he said, "Yes, Naruto-san is an interesting person indeed, especially since he was the one who caught the traitor Mizuki who tried to steal the Forbidden Scroll." "You mean Naruto-kun was the one who did that? Wow, I never would have thought he could beat a Chunin, but then again our sensei was an Anbu and he managed to get a few hits on her with his blade. Speaking of blades, Oni-san, do you think I can borrow one of your ninjatus? I've been working on my own style of kenjutsu that is based off of my speed and flexibility and I need a light katana in order for it to work," Itachi asked, raising an eyebrow. She nodded when he said, "You want to borrow one of my ninjatus, huh? Very well, but first you'll have to show me this sword style so that we can see which of my blades are compatible with it." He responded with a grin. At that moment, a frowning Sasuke entered the kitchen and took a seat across from Mikoto and Itachi. who arched an eyebrow and questioned what the matter was this time. The attitude of her youngest son, however, disappointed Makoto, who sighed and shook her head. As Makoto looked at her, his frown deepened and began to irritate her. He said, "Hello to you too, Sasuke." "Okay, what the heck is your problem?" she said, her voice irritated. The older twin raised an eyebrow when Sasuke demanded to know, "How did you get the Sharingan and a fully formed one at that?" When Sasuke heard this, he became enraged. "What does me having the Sharingan have to do with you? I activated it when I was 6 years old." She narrowed her eyes at him as he gave the order, "Tell me how to activate mine." Itachi had to control himself not to roll his eyes. She snapped back at the youngest member of the family, whose eyes widened in surprise. "I don't have to tell you anything, you jerk. You want to gain them? Then figure it out yourself. You are not our late father and you will not order me around like that idiot used to, you brat." She was just a few seconds away from jumping over the table and punching her foolish brother in the face when Sasuke yelled, "How dare you talk about dad like that? It's that freak's family's fault that he's dead." Her eyes briefly flashed red. Naruto-kun is not a freak and you better stop insulting him. Just because he beat you in everything and is better than you doesn't give you the right to be an ass to him, she said with a scowl. He muttered, but he recoiled when she used her Sharingan and gave him a glare that he only saw Itachi use when he was angry or about to harm someone. "I don't know what you see in him. If only you knew why half of the village didn't like him, then you would see things my way." She responded in a menacing manner, "If you don't stop talking, the only thing you're going to see is my fist in your eye." In a tone that made the boy shudder, Itachi said, "Sasuke." He commanded, looking at him as he gulped, "You are treading on dangerous grounds, now stop upsetting Makoto or else." Sasuke flinched and frowned as he said harshly, "And don't forget about what you did that could have gotten our entire clan in trouble and should be lucky I managed to convince the Hokage to allow you to still be in the shinobi ranks." When Makoto saw this, she sighed in disappointment. "Whatever. I'm out of here," he said, rising from the seat and walking away. What is the boy's problem? Itachi-kun, she said to herself, "I'm going to the grocery store to get a few things. I should be back soon." Itachi-kun nodded. "Come, Makoto." He stood up and said, "Let's see if we can find you a suitable blade." Shen followed suit. "Would it be possible for you to lend me some of your old Anbu armor? Nay Itachi.ni? Since he did keep his old uniform in storage, Itachi nodded when she said, "Yugo-sensei is having us start off doing circa-ranked missions tomorrow." "Of course, but you can't have the mask," he said, which made her pout because she really liked his weasel mask and occasionally stole it from him. She whimpered, "But I like the mask." He laughed and slapped her forehead with his middle and index fingers, causing her to yell and rub her forehead. Itachi stuck her tongue out and said, "Then you can get your own when you join Anbu like I did." The Namikaze estate with his shoes off and his hat tossed onto the hat rack, Naruto entered the magnificently furnished compound and said, "Hello, is anyone home?" Naruto raised an eyebrow after calling out and catching what appeared to be an empty sake bottle. Kukaku, who was resting back on the couch with an ice pack on her head, said, "Keep it down, brat." She winced and laughed as her head ached, and he said, "I told you to take it easy on the sake last night, especially with Uncle Kenpachi. Please tell me this isn't any of Kazuki's experimental medicine?" she muttered as Naruto produced a bottle of aspirin and threw it to her, catching it. "That bastard's gonna be the death of me, sake or bedwise." Naruto snickered when the pyromancer asked. "No, it isn't. This was from a real pharmacy," he said. "Talking about dad, where is the crazy genius?" After hearing an explosion, which caused Kukaku to leap up and clutch her head in agony, he said, "Never mind, I'll just follow the explosions." As her nephew perspired and walked over to the lab Kazuki had created, she snarled, "Tell that goofy pervert to keep it down or I'll introduce him to a new firecracker I invented." As he approached the door marked, "Lab," in kanji, he saw smoke coming out of it and laughed. He opened the door, but more smoke came out, and when it was gone, he saw Kazuki massaging the back of his head, his face and clothes covered in burn marks, which caused Naruto to perspire. "Can you really go a day without creating another invention and blowing up the lab, Dad?" Naruto asked humorously. "I'd rather not explain to Mom why your remains are in a matchbox." The man laughed sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. "How was the test, then?" Kasuga inquired. "My teammates are Makoto, Chan and Yakumo. Chan, and Yuga Uzuki is our sensei. We passed. Before you guys adopted me, she was one of my bodyguards." Naruto replied, and the inventor nodded. "I understand. How are you handling Ryujin Jaka and Injetsu, then?" His son shrugged when he asked. "Everything is proceeding smoothly." His response was, I'm learning how to use their sword styles that deal with their sealed form and shikais. I understand. So, have you mastered any of their unique moves yet? Naruto shook his head when Kazuki asked. Not just yet. In order to avoid hurting my teammates or doing unnecessary damage, he stated, Enjetsu is going to teach me one of his techniques while I continue to train. Since I activated Ryujin Jaka's Shikai yesterday, I'm learning how to control his flames before learning any of his techniques. Kazuki nodded in agreement. I'm glad to hear that. Since I need to learn how to control the flames it releases in Shikai after nearly burning down a portion of the forest. Injetsu's techniques will probably be the best to learn first before moving on to Ryujin Jaka's. Naruto clarified, and Kazuki nodded. As the mad genius returned to his covert project, Naruto said, well, I'm gonna head down to the training camp to work on my techniques for a while. Have fun with whatever it is you're inventing. A black blur known as aka Yoruichi leapt onto Naruto's shoulder as he was approaching the door leading to the training ground. Naruto grinned and caressed her behind the ear, causing her to purr. Hello mom, he said as she leapt off his shoulder and transformed into her human form, sporting a Cheshire grin. Hello to you too Sochi, she continued. Congratulations on the new team. Thank you. Say, are you interested in sparring with me for a while? The Shiwan heiress nodded as Naruto said, I need to practice my hand skills more. I wish I could. As they entered the training room, she said, I need to see how far you've come in your hand skills and your shunpo level. In the meantime, an ecstatic Rock Lee was racing toward the Namikaze estates after learning that his rival and best friend had not only won Rookie of the Year but was also officially a shinobi and part of a squad. What made him even more excited was the rumor that Naruto had killed an academy instructor who had turned traitor, along with several Chunin and Jonin who were supposed to help him. Naruto defeated them without even trying. As he pondered his thoughts, he was unaware that he was going to crash into Kenpachi and fall on the ground, rubbing his aching head. He knew his rival was skilled, but he did it with amazing skill. On the other hand, he knew from his spars with Naruto that the last Namikaze was skilled, but like him, he gained his power through hard work. He turned to face the green-clad ninja and raised the edge of his brow, saying, sorry about that, sir. I was in a hurry. He tried to explain, but the words died in his throat and his mouth hung open because he was staring at the intimidating figure of Kenpachi. Well, as he lifted Lee off the ground and back up on his feet, he said, you really need to watch where you're going, kid. Where are you going so quickly? Kenpachi inquired. Lee finally awoke from his daze and said, oh, I apologize, sir. I'm Rock Lee, and I was just going to meet Naruto, my friend. The big-breasted shinobi said, I was going to congratulate him on starting his shinobi career and winning Rookie of the Year for his age group. How are you acquainted with my nephew? Lee gawked when Kenpachi asked. Nephew? Oh, I see. Naruto informed me that he had been adopted. I take it that you're his uncle? Lee inquired. He began to leave a bewildered Lee after saying, yeah, I'm the Gaki's uncle. Then he interrupted, saying, oi, are you coming or what? Lee immediately nodded in response to Kenpachi's question and pursued him. Alongside Yoruichi and Naruto wearing his sleeveless muscle shirt, black pants, and martial arts shoes, Naruto simply shunpoed on a rock ledge and used his eyes to scan the area. When that failed, he closed his eyes and concentrated on improving his sense of smell and hearing because Yoruichi always repressed her Ryatsu. Naruto's eyes snapped open, and he instantly disappeared as Yoruichi, wearing her Onmitsukido outfit, appeared behind him, cocked her right fist back, and swung it at the back of his head. Her attack turned the rock texture into rubble, and the blonde fell to the ground. Man-ka-san, are you assessing my level of expertise or are you attempting to undermine me? She landed on the ground and grinned as Naruto asked. Come on, Sochi, would I do that or something? He sneered and assumed a fighting stance as she asked innocently, and they disappeared again after their kicks struck their ankles. When they resurfaced, they unleashed a barrage of punches and kicks that only touched each other's fists, feet, elbows, shins, and heels. Punches and kicks reverberated throughout the training ground, and the impact of their physical attacks shattered trees and rocks, and two black blurs were zipping around the area, causing even more destruction, before they disappeared once more. Kenpachi and Lee said a taijutsu user was staring at the scene and wondering how this place was made beneath the mansion as they entered the training grounds while the two flash warriors were sparring. Pretty impressive, huh, kid? The two blurs were seen colliding and separating at the same time when Kenpachi asked Lee, who simply nodded his head. As Lee's eyes widened, he remarked, looks like Yoruichi and Naruto are doing their daily spar. Is Naruto really out there traveling at that speed? I knew Naruto was quick, Especially when they spared him, Lee said to the mountain of muscle, but the speed he's moving at now is comparable to his sensei's when he's wearing his weights. Yes. There, he and his mother are causing all that damage while speeding around. While Lee just gazed at the scene in wonder, he said, but it's nowhere near the amount of damage he and I usually cause in our spars. When a dust explosion erupted, Naruto leapt out of it and skidded across the ground for a few seconds before stopping. He wiped off some blood that was dripping from his lip and was ready to jump back in when he saw a person in green waving at him and calling his name. What the? To see who it was, he narrowed his eyes. Is that Lee? Gua? He asked himself, but was interrupted when Yoruichi's foot struck his face, sending him flying, skipping across the landscape, and then crashing into a rock pillar. Yoruichi smirked as he landed where he had been before. Now, Naruto-kun, what did I say about averting your gaze from the enemy? She wiggled her index finger in mock disappointment as she said this. A flash of blue. White lightning emerged from the debris, and she leapt into the air to avoid it. Naruto then materialized in front of her, his fist reared back and blood streaming down the side of his face, swinging it at her face. It rose slowly in her direction, but as it was about to touch her, she abruptly sprang away and appeared close to Lee and Kenpachi. As the blonde appeared and glanced at Lee, she rubbed her cheek and noticed some blood smeared on her knuckles and smiles. He's getting better in anticipating my movements, she said. Hey Lee, tell me why you came to my house. Do you want to spar with someone? When the fuzzy, brioed spandex wearer awoke from his daze, the young Namikaze asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow when he said, actually I came here to congratulate you on becoming the Rookie of the Year and I heard that you dealt with a group of traitors that were Chunin and Junin ranked. Thanks and yeah I dealt with some traitors but they got themselves killed for underestimating me and stealing the Forbidden Scroll, he responded. I understand. I take it that you are Naruto's mother? Lee said, it's an honor to meet you ma'am. Yoruichi nodded and then arched an eyebrow when he bowed his head. She grinned in response. He looked up and nodded as she said, why thank you, but there's no need to be so formal to me, young man. Lee, it's getting late. Tomorrow is our first mission, and I have to meet my team. The boy turned pale as he said, if you want to spar bro, come over here, but in any case, avoid my aunt Kukaku, especially when she's having a bad day. Otherwise, you risk getting a firecracker stuck in a spot that doesn't get much sunlight. You mean your aunt is the frightful woman in the living room? Lee asked dreadfully, and Naruto gave a nod. Yoruichi laughed and Kenpachi snorted when he said, yeah but she's really not that bad once you get past her psychotic streak and love for explosions. Anyway come on Lee, I'll show you out since I don't want you getting lost and caught in any of my dad's traps. He gestured for Lee to follow him to the exit. The following day. Good morning ladies. Naruto called out, lifting his hat from his head, greeting Makoto and Yakumo as he entered the training grounds of Team 6. The girls saw him and smiled back, saying, good morning Naruto-kun. As he approached them, Yugo appeared in front of her student. Yugo grinned at the three as they said, good morning sensei. Good morning, all three of you. For all of you, I have some very good news. Their eyes widened in surprise as she said, apparently the Hokage thinks this Genin squad is qualified to perform C-ranked missions outside the village due to my report on your teamwork skills. Are we already going to begin with C-ranked missions? Yakumo inquired, and Yugo nodded. Yes, but only if all three of you believe you're prepared. After they gave it some thought, she reassured them, I don't want you to feel pressured to take higher ranking missions unless you think you guys are prepared for them. I'm ready. Makoto declared, her voice full of assurance and resolve. Yakumo said, me too. They turned to face Naruto, who merely smiled. Yugo's eye grinned as Naruto said, you already know my answer ladies. She shunshuns away after saying, excellent, now meet me to the Hokage Tower. Naruto puts an arm around Makoto's and Yakumo's shoulders and shun pose to the tower. Tower of Hokage Tsunade looked up and grinned as Yugo and her team entered her office while she was in the middle of setting up missions. So you three decided to go ahead and start on the C-rank mission huh? When Iruka, who was in the room, heard this, his eyes widened in shock and disbelief. She asked Yugo, who nodded. Hold on a second. Missions with a C ranking? Are you certain that's a good idea, Hokage? Sama? The female Hokage gave him a glare when he asked. Chunin, are you doubting my judgment? The scarred man gulped as she asked in a menacing tone. The academy instructor was a little unnerved by her glare and didn't want to be punched into the hospital. No, it's not that Hokage. Samai was just worried about them being ready to take on higher-ranking missions since they're newly graduated genin and assumed that they would start off with D ranks to improve their teamwork. Iruka. Sensei, I know you're worried about us, but we're ninja now, Naruto said, interrupting Iruka from a one-on-one encounter with his godmother's fist. We know what our careers entitle us to do, and we are no longer children training in the academy. Keeping us safe behind the village walls won't prepare us for the real challenges of our jobs. As for our teamwork, I trust Makoto and Yakumo with my life, and they trust me with theirs. Additionally, our sensei is a former member of Anbu, which consists of ninja who are the best in the village and take on the most dangerous missions. They also serve as the Hokage's bodyguards, so I'm fairly certain that we'll be alright because Makoto is extremely skilled at trapping in addition to using fire jutsu because of her clan's affinity for it. Additionally, like her older brother, she possesses a fully developed Sharingan, and Yakumo is exceptionally proficient in genjutsu because she was born with a powerful form of their Kekkei Genkai and is a good sensor. The man was still stumped when he finished. Tsunade coughed and spoke after her godson finished. Naruto is right, Iruka and these three are more than ready to take on the C-ranked missions and are without a doubt the strongest team of this year. Plus, should they happen to run into a situation that is out of Yugo's hands, then I'm positive Naruto can handle it, she stated. Tsunade then selected an escort mission file from the C-ranked files, saying, well, let's start you off with an escort mission. A drunken old man who appeared to be in his 50s entered the room after she snapped her fingers. You four will be escorting a bridge builder by the name of Tazuna back to Wave Country so that he can finish completing the bridge in order to connect Wave Country to the mainland, and you are to deal with any bandits, she said. He said inebriatedly, oblivious to the dark aura emanating from Makoto and Yakumo, while Yugo's right hand twitched. Huh? This is my protection? I paid good money to get 3 females and a blonde brat wearing a bucket hat who looks like a wannabe samurai. He would have continued to rant until a flash of silver split the sake bottle he was holding in half and it fell to the ground, but instead he said, TCH. I feel safe already. He was a little unnerved by Naruto's piercing gaze beneath his hat when he looked up to see him with ninjutsu halfway drawn. As Tazuna began to perspire a little, Naruto sheathed his blade and said, well, would you look at that? I was aiming for his arm, but due to the stench that's emitting from his body I missed. A shadow of a malevolent demon appeared behind Yakumo, and Yugo was sharpening her blade with a smooth stone, which caused Iruka to perspire. Tazuna saw Makoto with her Sharingan activated, saying, an old man, I suggest you apologize to my teammates and sensei before they give you a reason to fear Kunoichi. Meekly, he said, I'm sorry, please don't kill me. Yugo put a hand on Makoto's and Yakumo's heads and said, apology accepted. The two snorted and continued to glare at Tazuna. Just be sure to pick your words carefully next time, Tazuna-san, because my students are more than capable of protecting you and insulting them would not be beneficial to your health. Tazuna swallowed and slowly nodded his head. Okay, but I expect you to protect me with your lives. I am the client after all, he replied. They nodded and left the office to gather their belongings after she said, of course. All right, you three, head back to your homes and make sure to pack enough supplies for this trip. We'll meet at the main gate in 2 hours. Main gate of Konoha. Together with Tazuna, Yugo had her backpack and equipment at the main gate. At that moment, they noticed Naruto coming toward them, followed by Makoto and Yakumo. With her outfit, Makoto seemed to be wearing shin guards, arm guards, and a silver Anbu vest. A ninjutsu was strapped to her back. The same style was worn by Yakumo, but she wore black ones and had a ninjutsu strapped to her back. Naruto, who had a big scroll fastened to his backpack, and the two Kunoichi both had backpacks. Additionally, they had pouches for extra weapons fastened to their belts. They appeared as though they were getting ready for battle, and Yugo arched an eyebrow at this. In contrast, Tazuna whistled in astonishment upon witnessing this. He thought to himself, I guess they really aren't cocky brats. Yugo grinned. The man's brow twitched as Naruto said, hey you old drunk, I see you've decided to get rid of the booze smell while we were getting ready. He growled, shut it blondie. I'm not old. Naruto blinked several times and raised an eyebrow. Tazune gave him a nod when he asked, do you have any grandchildren? Then you're old. Makoto and Yakumo giggled as Tazuna scowled and muttered about disrespectful gakis. After 20 minutes, Team 6 was traveling toward Wave Country on a dirt road. Naruto stood in front of Tazuna, with Yugo covering the back, Makoto protecting the man's left, and Yakumo protecting his right. Makoto occasionally glanced at Tazuna, who appeared to be extremely anxious. She said, Tazuna-san, and jolted the man out of his reverie. Are you feeling okay? You've been acting angsty since we left the village. With a nervous smile, the bridge builder rubbed the back of his head. Although bandits are a problem, they aren't that dangerous unless in large groups, so what would he have to be afraid of? Itachi taught her how to read people's psyche by analyzing their body language, and she was certain that Tazuna was hiding something. "Oh, it's nothing for you to fret over. I'm just worried about running into bandits, that's all," he assured the female Uchiha, who narrowed her eyes at the man, "but they return to normal if you say so." As he smirked, Naruto noticed a puddle beneath a nearby tree and thought, "You've got to be kidding. It hasn't rained in a week, and the genjutsu is C-ranked." He reached into the sleeve of his green jacket and took out what looked like a small gray cube, saying, "Let's see just how much of a wallop Kukaku Oba Chan's explosive cubes pack." Yakumo already sensed the genjutsu and turned to Yugo, who slowly shook her head, telling her to keep moving. After they had passed the puddle, Naruto tilted his hat down and grinned. All he said was, "Boom." Then there was an explosion where the puddle was, and two nin, Gozu and Maizu, the Oni-Kyādai no Kiri, the demon brothers of the mist, were covered in burns and wearing cloaks, breathing masks on their faces, and Kiri headbands with slashes on them and a single horn on the sides. One of them had a gauntlet on his left arm, and the other on his right, and they were covered in burns. They both uttered the words simultaneously and charged at the group, saying, "Kill them." Makoto. The Uchiha nodded as Yugo yelled, and she drew a kunai and hurled it at the chained weapon, causing it to pin the chain into a tree and cause the brothers to jerk back into position. "Gosh!" They both yelled, severed the connection with the chain from their gauntlets, and charged the group once more. Makoto charged at Gozu, her Sharingan activated, her right hand wrapped around the hilt of her ninjutsu, and Gozu swung his gauntlet at her head, but she rolled and tucked under the claws, twisting her body as she did so. She immediately drew her ninjutsu and slashed him across the back, causing Gozu's eyes to widen. As she barely avoided having her head chopped off by Gozu's claws, she screamed, "Amizu Bunshin, water clone, crap." He kicked her in the torso and taunted her, saying, "Nice try, lil girl." She shook her head and moaned, but she gasped in pain as Gozu's claws dug into her chest while he had a gleeful expression on his face. She coughed up blood, smiled feebly, and changed into a flock of crows that were scattered all over the place. Describe T. Gua. Because Makoto's blade passed through his back and out of his torso, he let out a cry. As he stumbled forward, she drew her weapon behind his back and said, "You should know better than to look Uchiha in the eyes, fool." He growled and was about to turn around and attack when he saw Makoto's icy face and her blade piercing him directly between the eyes. You bitch." Maizu's face took on a horrified expression as he witnessed his brother being killed by the female Uchiha. "Brother," he cried out and instantly saw red. As Makoto pulled her blade out of his skull, her shinobi senses kicked in and she barely avoided a claw strike and saw hatred and rage fill Maizu's eyes. "You bitch, I'll rip you apart," he let out a roar. Maizu was howling in pain and clutching his bleeding stump when a flash of silver ripped off his arm. Naruto appeared in front of a confused Makoto, and Maizu looked up at the blonde with the bucket hat and a katana in his hand. However, Yugo Azuki struck him in the head before he could react. The brother of the demon. She pulled out some rope and began tying up the missing nin, saying, "They're C-class chunin from Kiri wanted for joining in a coup against the Mizukage." Makoto saw Gozu's dead body and saw blood and brain matter ooze out of his skull. Makoto dropped her ninjutsu, ran to the bushes, and began to lose her lunch. Naruto sighed as he saw this and turned to face Gozu's body. He quickly swung his blade, slicing off the head cleanly and using a Kaiden jutsu to destroy the body before drawing out a scroll and sealing the head inside. Yakumo put her hand on the ground and appeared to be focused because her eyes were closed as she sent chakra pulses into the ground. She stood up again after a few minutes and said, "Sensei, I don't sense any other chakra signatures in the area." The woman who had finished trying Maizu nodded. "Breathe slowly, Makoto. Chan." Naruto said in a calming voice as Makoto looked at him and nodded. She immediately covered her mouth, turned back to the bushes, and threw up while Naruto continued to gently rub her back. At the moment, Makoto was throwing up in the bushes and was panting a little in an attempt to get the image of a dead Gozu out of her head. When Yakumo noticed this, she turned to her sensei, who nodded and told her to go check on her teammate while she ran off to where Naruto and Makoto were. Tazuna.san. Yugo said, grabbing the man's attention, "We need to talk." The man swallowed at her tone because it sounded harsh and dangerous. In the meantime, Yakumo took a water bottle from her pack and handed it to Makoto, who began to drink the water to stay hydrated. Naruto then went to retrieve her blade, cleaned the blood and brain matter off with a cloth, and then went to return it to her. glaring at the now frightened man, she said, Tazuna-san, you better start explaining why we were recently attacked by Chunin-level missing nin and why they were targeting you. This was supposed to be a C-ranked mission to escort you back to Wave Country. Did you misrepresent the rank of the mission? He said, you see, Wave Country doesn't have enough money to pay for a higher ranked mission, otherwise we'd end up being broke and Konoha was our only option. As Yakumo, Makoto, and Naruto made their way back to their sensei and Tazuna, she stayed silent and allowed him to explain. Sigh. Look, I had no other choice but to lie about it, but I have a good reason for doing it. How is that even possible? Because of its trading routes and fishing ports, Wave Country ought to be a prosperous nation. Why can't it pay for a mission with a higher ranking? Yugo inquired. Yugo raised an eyebrow in response to Tazuna's statement. It's because of a man named Gato. Gato? You're referring to the owner of one of the biggest shipping companies within the elementals. How is he connected to this? She inquired, and Tazuna began to describe how the man had taken over Wave and was depriving the nation of its resources, cutting off trade routes, and preventing ships from delivering them the supplies they required to survive. He was also a member of the criminal underworld syndicate and was in charge of smuggling illegal drugs and engaging in other criminal activities. You see? That bridge is our last hope for rebuilding our nation, and Gato has a price on my head. How will the bridge be constructed if I am killed? I'm pleading with you. Can you help me stop Gato and save my nation? I promise to pay double for the mission if you assist me in completing this. Will you please help me? My friends and family are counting on me, and I can't disappoint them, he pleaded. He's telling the truth, Sensei, so what should we do? Naruto said, meeting the man's eyes. He inquired as Yugo aside and gave it some thought. Tazuna looked back up as she concluded, originally I would have to cancel the mission and head back to Konoha. She made the man look down, but she said, but I think an exception can be made about this if you agree to fully pay for the A-ranked mission once Wave is up and running again. Now then, all I need to do is send a message to the Hokage so that she can send a support team to help us, since I'm pretty sure Gato will send a Jonin-level nin to deal with us, she said. Naruto on the other hand is beaming. Leave that to me, sensei. Naruto bit his thumb, performed a few hand seals, and placed his hands on the ground. Kachiyose no jutsu, summoning jutsu, he said, and as his hand cleared, a small orange toad with blue markings around his eyes and lips as well as a blue vesta appeared on the ground. Yugo's eyes widened when she saw her student summon a toad, which meant that Jiraiya allowed Naruto to sign the agreement. Gamakichi waved his webbed hand at the group and said, Yo! Kaya! The others started to perspire as Makoto screamed and abruptly grabbed hold of Yakumo, who nearly fell, causing Kichi to blink and turn to face Naruto. Dude, what's her deal? Makoto's eyes widened as Kichi asked Naruto. Does it speak? As Yakumo struggled to remove her, she said, Frogs don't talk. She also mentioned that Toad had a tick mark on his head. I'm a toad, not a frog, hello, he screamed at the young woman. Keep it away from me or I'll get warts. She let out a cry and encircled the struggling Yakumo with her arms and legs. With a bead of sweat on his face, Naruto said, Okay. Anyway Kichi, I need you to tell my godmother, who is the Hokage, that Team 6 needs a backup squad to assist them on a now turned a ranked mission. Alright, but what do I stand to gain? Naruto produced 2 blue bags in response to the toad's question. Gamakichi smiled as he said, the candy is in the one with the polka dots, and the slime explosives that you can use on your brother are in the other one with the stars. He exclaimed, sweet, and accepted the bags. I'll let her know immediately. Ja.ne. He then exhales in a puff of smoke. Yakumo cried out, Makoto, please get off of me, as Uchiha clung to her like a lifeline. Naruto sighed as he turned his head. He whispered, this is gonna be a long mission. An agitated Tsunade asked the young toad, so you're telling me Gamakichi that Tazuna lied about the mission being C-ranked and that Team 6 was attacked by the Demon Brothers and are requesting that I send back up? The young toad nodded, and she began to sigh and rub her temples severely. She muttered, great, just when my day couldn't get any worse. She snapped her fingers, causing an Anbu wearing a boar mask to materialize. She commanded the masked ninja, who nods and shunshuns away, to, Boar, please inform Kurenai Yuhi and her squad that they are to head to the Hokage Tower ASAP. At that moment, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kiba appeared to be furious as Team 7 entered the room. Why are you asking? Because they had to complete the mission where they had to catch Tora for the 8th time today and said the cat was in a cage, in addition to having rips in their clothes and scratches on their faces. With a smile on his masked face, the copy nin declared, "We've completed the mission in capturing Tora again." He had seen the team attempt to capture Tora numerous times, only to be mauled by the demon cat and repeat the process until they were able to capture him using a cage trap and catnip. As the copy ninja nodded, Tsunade remarked, "Great job, Kakashi. The daimyo's wife will be very happy to know she got her pet back." Gah. These D ranks are stupid. They are nothing but chores that these civilians are too lazy to do, said Kiba. Sasuke grinned as he said, "Speaking of D ranks, where's the loser and his team at? They're probably cleaning out a sewer." Tsunade gave the two a glare after he said to himself, "The freaks probably babysitting dogs and snot-nosed brats." In a tone that suggested they were trying their luck, she said, "Kakashi, I would suggest that you tell your two students to keep their opinion and attitude towards my godson to themselves." Kakashi's student's eyes widened in shock as she smirked and said, "And as for Naruto and his team, I already have them going on a C-ranked mission." When Sakura screamed, "What? That Baka and his team got a high-ranking mission before our team did. That's not fair," Sasuke snarled sharply. "Cry me a river, little girl. Team 6 has proven that their teamwork skills were top-notch and their sensei as well as I the Hokage dubbed them ready to take on a C-ranked mission. You three on the other hand are the opposite, and from your sensei's report and in my opinion your teamwork so far is on par with a pack of brain-dead monkeys," she replied with a sneer. "What does our teamwork have to do with anything? I'm a Uchiha and I don't need my so-called team to progress as a ninja. I'm better off without having dead weight hindering my great abilities," he responded with a growl. Sakura hit Kiba in the back of the head after he growled, "Who are you calling dead weight, duck ass?" Sakura shouted, "Don't call Sasuke.kun that, you mangy mutt." In contrast, Kakashi shook his head and covered his face with his hand, questioning whether this was his penalty for being late. He never finished because he was grabbed by his collar and forced to look into the angry eyes of Tsunade. "Look, the point is I want a higher ranking mission and I want one now. Anything that freak can do I can do better because I'm in." She yelled at the startled woman with the raven hair, "Who the hell do you think you're talking to, you little shit? You should consider yourself lucky you're even a shinobi of my village after the little stunt you pulled the other day and attempted to do harm to my godson. You know who my godson is, right? Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze? The so-called freak who was the last of two powerful clans and the one who whooped your dumbass in the academy and became the top of his class like your brother and his father did. It's thanks to him you're not shitting in a bucket behind bars being ass raped like the other ignorant fools who think they can pull crap behind my back. I am the Hokage and you will show me some fucking respect or I'll have you doing D-rank missions until you're my age," she threatened while said prick remained frightened until he was shoved back and fell on his ass. "Matter of fact, I got some D-ranked missions here that'll show you some humility and a reason not to piss me off. One of the farmers needs his horse's stables cleaned out, there are sewer pipes in the market district that need to be unclogged, and after that several parks need to be cleared of trash and the Inuzuka pens need to be cleaned as well," she said as she handed Kakashi 4 scrolls. Sakura complained, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not fair. Why do we have to do those missions? Because she didn't want her hair or clothes to be ruined." She smiled and said in a sweet but deadly tone, "Why do you have to do these missions, Haruno? I'll tell you why." Kakashi took a step aside, took out some earplugs, and inserted them into his ears. As their sensei removed the earplugs, she yelled, "Because I said so, that's why," while executing Iruka's demon head jutsu. The shockwave from her voice sent the 3 genin flying out the door. She responded, "Kakashi, I expect you to make sure that they do this work before day ends and make sure that brat puts some effort in his work. If I hear he's been slacking, then it's you who receives their punishment." He was extremely nervous because he didn't want to be the target of her fist. He departed the office to begin his student's work after saying, "Hi Hokage Sama." At that moment, Team 8 entered the office. Kurenai asked the female Hokage, who nodded, "You called for us, Hokage Sama?" "Yes, I did, Kurenai-san. Not too long ago I sent Team 6 on a C-ranked mission to escort a bridge builder named Tazuna to Wave Country so that he can finish up the bridge, and it appears that the man lied about the mission rank due to the fact that they were attacked by 2 Chunin-level missing nin from Kiri and were hired by Gato, who apparently has taken over Wave Country's economy and the shipping routes." She clarified what made their eyes widen. The Genjutsu mistress questioned her leader, "If that's the case, then wouldn't it be better to have Anbu assist them?" She gave the red-eyed Kunoichi a nod and said, "Normally yes, but your team will be more than capable of being their backup. You're to leave ASAP." She turned to face Shino, Hinata, and Sai and said, "Hi Hokage Sama." The three of them went home to get their gear after she told them, "You heard her, now head to your homes and get your gear." Hinata hoped her crush was safe and unharmed. Alongside Team 6 at the moment, Yakumo was gathering firewood while Naruto patrolled the area where they were camped. Tazuna was staying by the fireplace with Makoto and Yugo. At the moment, Makoto was examining her hands, which were shaking because she still hadn't moved past her first kill. This caught Yugo's attention, so she put a hand on her student's shoulder. She said worriedly, "Makoto Chan, you've been trembling for a while, is everything okay?" And the female Uchiha shook her head and let out a deep sigh. She muttered, "I just can't get the image of that Chunin I killed out of my mind. Itachi.ni.san said there would be times where I'd have to kill on missions, but I didn't think it would be this difficult to do so." It was time for Yugo to assist the young female Uchiha, as most genin would lose it after their first kill and would require counseling. Yugo sighs because Kushina, Naruto's mother, was her sensei back when she made her first kill, and the redhead helped her through that traumatic experience. Killing's never easy, Makoto Chan, especially for a genin, but know that you only killed that Chunin in order to protect our client and your teammates, and as long as you show remorse for those you have killed, you will not lose your sanity. She reassured her pupil, who sighed. And once this mission is over, try to talk to your mother or brother about this. Makoto managed to stop her hands from shaking and said, "Hi sensei." Naruto then materialized. The female sword user nodded in agreement as he explained, "Hey sensei, I patrolled the campsite a couple of times and found nothing out of the ordinary." Then he approached Makoto and took a seat beside her. Naruto jokingly asked, "How are you holding up, you pyromaniac?" before the female Uchiha gave him a playful shoulder punch. She smirked back at Naruto and said, "Shut it, you, and I'm doing a lot better." Then Yakumo entered the campsite carrying more wood and said, "Good job, Naruto-kun. Now then, all we have to do now is wait for our backup to come." The following day, until Yakumo picked up something, Team 6 and the bridge builder were strolling along the dirt road that led to one of the ports that went to Wave Country. She pointed out to the female swordsman, "Yugo Sensei, I'm picking up 4 signatures that are heading our way." Her student shook her head and smiled when she asked, "Are they enemies?" "No, they're allies, and they happen to be Kurenai, Senpai, Hinata, Chan, Sai.san, and Shino.san, she replied. As he tipped his hat up and noticed Team 8 approaching them, Naruto smiled and said, "Well, it would seem my godmother got my message." In jest, he said, "It's about time you guys showed up. We were about to head out to Wave Country without you." At that point, Hinata came up next to him and gave him a hug, which he returned. Following the introductions and mission explanation, the group left for the port that would take them to the country of waves. The boat ride to Wave Country was a low-key affair because Gato had his hired help patrol the watery borders and raid any finishing ships to keep food intake low. Gato's control over the stores forced them to pay outrageous amounts for protection, and those who were unable to pay paid with physical harm to their bodies. As a result, the food that was permitted into Wave Country was largely expired and priced exorbitantly. In other words, Tazuna had to use the bridge he was constructing to rescue the residents of Wave Country from the real hell they were living in. When Naruto and the others realized how big the partially completed bridge was, they let out a low whistle. Naruto remarked, "Wow, that's a pretty huge bridge." Speaking solemnly as he looked at his masterpiece, Tazuna stated, "Yes. That bridge is our country's final form of hope. Once it's completed, we'll be free from Gato's reign. Everything is riding on the completion of that bridge." They arrived at the shore after their boat ride, and the ferryman wished them luck on their quest as they each got off the boat. They were all on high alert as they navigated a path through the forest that would lead them to Tazuna's house. Naruto became a little cautious as the fog began to grow a bit thicker. With a nod from the other genin, Naruto said, "Keep your guard up, guys. Last time we had an encounter with 2 Chunin-level nin, so it's a possibility that Gato also hired a jonin." Kurenai and Yugo concurred. Sai pulled out a kunai and threw it into the bushes after hearing some rustling. There was a squeal, and a dead boar tumbled out of the bushes. The others gazed at the lifeless creature and Sai, who gave him a sheepish head rub. "Gomen. Sorry. I guess I have to tune my alertness down a little." Sai offered an apology. Kurenai nodded to the pale boy and said, "It's okay, Sai, but be more careful." However, some of his colleagues raised their eyebrows when Naruto pulled the kunai out and sealed the dead boar in a tiny scroll. They proceeded to Tazuna's house after Naruto rationally remarked, "What? We don't need to attract any predators to the body, plus we could use it as a food source just in case." Naruto froze in place as they did, scanning the area with sharp eyes. Hinata's crush tilted his hat up and asked, What is it, Naruto-kun? As he looked around, the blonde replied, I don't know why, but for some reason I get this feeling that someone is watching us. While Hinata activated her Byakugan and saw nothing but tiny animals and insects, Yakumo responded, Are you sure, Naruto, because I don't sense anyone close? Naruto gave a negative shake of his head. After responding, he abruptly took a pronged kunai out of his sleeve and hurled it at the bushes, saying, No, someone is close by. His signature is faint but is close. As he slowly made his way to the bush, he turned to see a white rabbit with its ears split, its face wet with anime tears, and it had been nearly skewered by Naruto's kunai. After removing and storing the weapon from the tree, Naruto took the traumatized rabbit in his arms and carried it out of the bushes. As Hinata took the rabbit and attempted to soothe it, Tazuna said dryly, You got us worked up over a rabbit? Naruto turned back to his sensei after closely examining the rabbit. Naruto asked, Yugo-sensei, it's the middle of spring, correct? And the sword mistress nodded. He asked again, Then why is that rabbit still white when it should be brown? And she, Kurenai, and the other genin looked at the animal. Naruto-san is right. That rabbit should be in its spring coat since winter has been over for the last 5 months. Plus, due to the climate of this island, it would be considered illogical to run into one. The Aburame said. The sound of air whizzing entered their ears, and Naruto's eyes, along with Kurenai and Yugo's, widened as Sai responded. So this one must have been trained indoor and was used by someone as a substitution. Yugo yelled, Everyone get down, and seized Makoto and Yakumo, dragging them to the ground. Sai grabbed Tazuna, and Kurenai did the same to Hinata and Shino. But as the blade approached, Naruto put his right hand on Injetsu's hilt. Just as Yugo was about to yell for Naruto to duck, he suddenly pulled out his blade, which struck the whizzing broadsword and sent the massive weapon flying in the other direction before becoming lodged in a large tree. As the others rose from their positions, a deep, rough voice that seemed to reverberate throughout the forest said, Impressive move, Gaki. The person who threw the human-sized sword emerged at this point and stood atop the hilt. He was a tall, distinctly muscular man with pale skin, short, spiky black hair, brown eyes, and small eyebrows. The lower half of his face was covered in bandages that resembled a mask. Kirigakure's insignia was displayed on the metal plate, and he wore his forehead protector sideways on his head. In addition, he wore loose-fitting pants with the characteristic Kirigakure stripes, mimetic wrist warmers that reached his elbows, and matching leg warmers. His bare chest was only covered by a belt that he fastened his sword to. He was the Demon of the Mist, one of the 7 shinobi swordsmen, Zabuza Momochi. When they saw this man, Yugo's and Kurenai's eyes widened, and Yugo's face was grim. Kurenai muttered, Oh, this is not good. Well, if it isn't the queen of Genjutsu Kurenai Yuhi and the sword mistress and master of the Konoha Crescent Moon-style Yugo Azuki. To thank Kunoichi of Ucaliber regarding the old man I was hired to kill, he said, and then concentrated on Naruto. He smirked as he asked Naruto, who was sheathing Injetsu, You with the katana, what's your name? Anyone who can draw a blade at that level and deflect Kabikari Bacha, decapitating carving knife, is no amateur in the sword arts. Zabuza raised an eyebrow, but then his eyes widened as Naruto responded with a mock bow. Oh, me? I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Sorry, but I don't have a kick-ass nickname like my leaders or you do, Demon of the Mist. He's the son of the legendary Yellow Flash and Red Death? Hey, maybe Konoha hasn't grown soft after all if they produced a genin of his level. Matter of fact, these brats look like they could fight Chunin-level nin. His mask concealed a grin. Kurenai and Yugo appeared between Naruto and the other genin, and Tazuna was surrounded by them as he said, Well, as interesting as this is, I have a job to do, so if you don't mind. Yugo's hand was encircling the hilt of her blade, Tsukiheim, while Kurenai had a kunai drawn. The man sighed in disappointment as Yugo answered, I'm afraid we can't allow you to do that. As he looked at them homicidally and unleashed a burst of murderous intent on the other genin who felt as though they were out of breath, he responded, That's a shame because now I have to kill every single one of you. However, that came to an end when Zabuza felt an unseen but strong pressure. He turned to see the icy, deadly stare of the Uzumaki Namikaze heir, who was applying a sudden, intense spiritual pressure to the missing nin, which made him cease releasing his ki before the pressure subsided. Is that right? I may be a genin, but that is only by rank, Naruto replied. Zabuza seized his blade's hilt, disappeared, and fell into the lake. Is that so? Do you know what the title ninja means, boy? We are killers. We lie, cheat, steal, and kidnap on missions we are given by our clients. Our only meaning in life is to take and destroy. He replied. You brats don't know the true meaning of being a ninja. I on the other know what it's like to have your hands stained with the blood of your victims. Are you done gloating because all you're doing is annoying the hell out of me? Naruto sighed. Kurenai and Yugo understood what he meant, but the other genin were perplexed. And FYI, I happen to have killed a couple of traitors from my village right after I graduated because they were too stupid to allow their grudge that happened decades ago to blind their way of thinking and are now spending an eternity in hell for it. Oh, so you've already taken your fair share of lives. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy seeing the life in their eyes fade away from their eyes after you struck them down? I know that feeling all too well. He smiled and then raised his hands to seal attacks. Kirigakure no Jutsu, Hidden Mist Jutsu. The surrounding area was now completely covered in a dense white mist, making Zabuza invisible. With one hand in a ram seal and her kunai drawn, Kurenai emerged behind the genin and their client. Stay close to the bridge builder and don't let your Gurud down for even a second. Zabuza is a master in the Muon Satsujin Jutsu, silent killing art. A technique that he was famous for using when he was a member of Kiri's Embu assassination unit. In the bingo book he was said to be so skilled that it was stated he can kill his victims before they even realized it has happened. The Genjutsu mistress clarified as Zabuza fog that was covered in mist. They shuddered a little when the man said, that is correct, so you would be wise to stay on your guard, little ninja, or you might find yourselves standing before the Shinigami. On the other hand, Naruto remains composed and concentrated. Now let's see it. There are said to be 8 vital parts in the human body that can be targeted and if struck, can result in the death of the victim. Liver, lungs, jugular vein, clavicle vein, spinal cord, brain, kidneys, and heart. Should I take you all out attacking all 8 spots at once, or should I just slowly end your lives? Zabuza said with a gloomy voice. However, Naruto was beginning to grow weary of his scare strategy. To get the others to relax, Naruto flared his chakra and cleared the fog, releasing his own ki around the area. Guys, calm down. He's trying to psyche you out into making a wrong move. Don't fall for his trick. Yugo began to focus her senses, just as Kurenai does, thinking, Naruto, great job. You managed to get your teammates to relax and stay focused. Zabuza made an appearance next to the genin in the bridge builder, his blade drawn back, and he responded, impressive Gaki, but your little act of assurance has only delayed the inevitable. He answered, and now it's over. As Yugo saw Zabuza preparing to cut them all in half, her eyes snapped open, and Kurenai swore. The two kunoichi watched Zabuza swing his blade and thought frantically, shit, we're not gonna make it. Clang. Squelch. They turned to see a startled Zabuza and Naruto. With his right hand, the blonde used ninjutsu to block the large blade, and with his left, he used a tri-pronged kunai to stab the man in the stomach. Naruto scowled when he heard what sounded like water leaking, and everyone else appeared shocked by this. He hit a Zabuza, but it was only a water clone. As the clone was dispelled, Naruto said, Mizu Bunshin, water clone, huh? Very clever. Behind him, a voice that belonged to Zabuza, who had his blade up, asked, ya think? Naruto.kun behind you, exclaimed Mikoto. A member of the Seven Swordsmen smiled with delight at Naruto's execution after he turned his head slightly and was sliced in half by Kabikirabocho. Zabuza grunted in agony as a blade protruded from the center of his chest, and a cool, collected voice responded, you should be grinning Momochi.san. Naruto retorted, you are not worthy of believing that the battle is over. How? Zabuza asked the blonde, his eyes wide, and discovered that the only item he had killed was the bucket-shaped hat, which had been split in two and was now on the ground. He said, substitution huh? Clever. Naruto then pulled out his blade and severed Zabuza's head, causing him to scatter into the water. His spirit energy suddenly flared, dispelling the mist and revealing a startled Zabuza and his clones. Are you done playing around, Zabuza, because your little tricks are starting to annoy the hell out of me? He asked. Naruto took his forehead protector from his waist and tied it around his head, saying, and that is a bad thinga for you. Really? You think you can take me on, brat? I'm one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, you fool. I've been using a blade before you were even a gleam in your father's eyes. You may have some skill with a sword, but you don't hold a candle to me, he exclaimed. Really? That's a shame, because I barely tried to take down those clones that only had about 1/10 of your real strength. You must be really weak if your clones are that strong. The comment made Naruto growl. Zabuza growled, refusing to be made fun of by some would-be swordsman. Pick your next words carefully, brat, because they'll be your last if you don't watch your mouth. As Naruto watched the man get irked, A tiny smirk came to his face. As he whirled his blade a couple of times, Naruto teased, "What's wrong? Am I pissing you off, oh mighty demon of the mist? What the heck is he doing trying to get himself killed?" Gritted her teeth, Yakumo questioned. "I believe he's using the taunting tactic in order to make Zabuza lose his composure, which will lead to his tactics being less sufficient and flawed," Shino clarified. "But it could also result in him outright killing us." Yakumo and Makoto were held accountable for that remark. He took out his blade and remarked, "You've got guts talking to me like that, Gaki, and I'll be sure to spill them all over the ground." As Kurenai and Yugo prepared to fight the man to the death, Naruto stopped them by extending his arm. Naruto said, "Hold on you two. I think it would be wise if I fought Zabuza for now." They both gave him startled looks. Kurenai practically shouted at the blonde genin, "Naruto, are you nuts? He's listed as an A-ranked ninja in the bingo book. He's too dangerous to be taken on alone." Instead, she shook her student's head and said, "She's right, Naruto. You and Zabuza are on completely different levels in terms of skill. Now stand down." Her eyes widened as he said solemnly, "I'm afraid I can't do that. Hear me out first. I know you were a member of Anbu and Kurenai. Sensei is a jonin who's highly skilled in genjutsu, but there is a problem with that. Zabuza is said to be said in using his senses to the fullest, so using genjutsu against him, no matter how skilled you are, won't work on him unless he's weakened. And then there's your sword style, Yugo Sensei. It basically based on using your speed, but the thing you're lacking physically is the strength to take him on. As a female you have speed, agility, and flexibility, but he is stronger than you since he can easily wield that Zanbato easily and it doesn't hinder his speed in any way. In a match against your sword and his, he would outright destroy you." Naruto went on to explain he was. Yugo was right, as much as he hated to admit it. She asked Naruto, who grinned, "Answer me this, Naruto, what makes you the better candidate in fighting Zabuza?" Holding Injetsu up, he replied, "For one thing, my blade can match his since right now it's in its sealed form. And two, I am capable of matching Zabuza's strength because when he swung his blade earlier and I deflected it, I was able to decipher the amount of strength he put into the blade. I'll admit he's strong, but I've had my experience of fighting strong opponents like my uncle Kenpachi and my mother Yoruichi, and sadly Zabuza's got nothing on them," he replied. Can you guarantee that you can face him without assistance?" Yugo responded. Naruto responded, "Yes." She addressed the red-eyed Kunoichi, who sighs in defeat but appears doubtful about a genin facing a monster like Zabuza, saying, "Okay then. Kurenai, let's stand back for now." She said to Naruto, who grinned, "Fine, but if it gets out of hand we're stepping in, got it?" He drew a line on the ground with the sole of his sandal and said, "Got it, but I assure you your help won't be needed because I don't plan on letting him pass this line." Makoto, Yakumo, and Hinata appeared concerned as they nodded and moved to stand next to the other genin. Naruto told the demon of the mist, who snorted, "Now where was I? Oh yes, I was about to kick your ass around this forest." As 6 Mizu Bunshins appeared around Naruto, their blades raised in various directions, blocking any escape route, he remarked, "In your dreams, Gaki, now die." After disappearing through Shunpo, Naruto reappeared with Injetsu drawn out and away from the Mizu Bunshin. Zabuza was stunned as the clones scattered into the water. Zabuza thought to himself, "Impossible. No one can move that fast." Naruto turned to face the man, his eyes as cold as ice. With a tone that promised a swift and painless death, he said, "I thought I made it clear, Zabuza, that your weaker clones can't touch me, so I suggest you fight me personally or I will kill you." Based on the expression in Naruto's eyes, Zabuza knew he wasn't joking. The man smiled at the expression in Naruto's eyes and laughed to himself, saying, "Damn, he's for real. Those aren't the eyes of a rookie. Those are the eyes of a warrior who will not hesitate to take his opponent down." He exclaimed with excitement, "Such sharp eyes you have. Now I know you're the real deal. Let's see how good you are in swordsplay, kid." Because he was actually up against another swordsman, and even though Naruto was getting older, Zabuza was eager to battle the Leaf Genin. Naruto's face lit up with a tiny smile that looked just like Kenpachi's. "I intend to." Naruto pointed his blade sideways as silver-white Ryotsu, spirit energy, flared around his body. Naruto screamed, "Rip him apart, Injetsu!" And Injetsu instantly changed into its Shikai form. Though there was a significant difference, the blade bore a striking resemblance to Ichigo's Zanjetsu Shikai. There were 2 white crescent-shaped moons on the black side of the giant cleaver, but they were inverted, and a black crescent moon on both sides of the silver edge of the blade, which was slightly serrated like a saw's teeth. The blade lacked a guard. and its tang was wrapped in a dark gray cloth that appeared to extend from the tip in place of a hilt. When Zabuza saw the simple katana change into a menacing blade that made Kabikirabocho appear dejected, his eyes grew so big they seemed to be about to pop out of his sockets. As with the others, Yugo's eyes were identical because she had never seen anything like that in her life. Yakumo asked the question that everyone else was curious about. What in Kami's name just happened? Naruto. Kun's sword just transformed. Naruto put the flat end of his blade on his shoulder and said, "Allow me to introduce you Zabuza to my blade and one of my companions in Jetsu." A silver, white aura surrounded the blade, which vibrated as he said, "Pretty wicked looking for a blade, huh? You should feel honored that you are seeing him in his released state. Trust me when I say there is more to him than his menacing appearance." Naruto unexpectedly materialized in front of a startled Zabuza, his blade thrusting back. "And from the looks of it, he seems to be pretty excited to fight you, so let's get started." The man's heart region was the target of Naruto's thrusting blade. Fortunately, he was able to raise the flat side of the blade, and when Injetsu struck the broadsword, a shockwave was created, sending Zabuza skidding back toward the lake's edge. He exclaimed, "Damn it, again with that speed," as he noticed Naruto had vanished once more. When he looked up, he saw the blonde flying down toward him. While Naruto swung his blade downward, Zabuza swung his upward, growling. The water and ground exploded around them as they made contact, causing the ground to tremble. As Tazuna staggered back and landed on his ass, he exclaimed, "Whoa, what the hell?" Zabuza landed back on the lake after jumping out of the explosion. Naruto also leapt out of the water and ascended in the direction of Zabuza, whereupon they clashed once more, causing water to erupt all around them. Sparks flew from the weapons as their blades ground against one another. As their strength stalemate came to an end and they began to launch a barrage of evenly matched sword attacks, he wondered, how the hell can his strength rival mine? Since they didn't believe Naruto was this strong, the other genin were perplexed. Sai said admiringly, "Namikaze-san seems to be faring well against our enemy." He questioned Makoto and Yakumo, who shook their heads. "Did you two know about his sword or his skills in Kenjutsu?" As Makoto watched Naruto avoid having his head chopped off and flip backwards a few times, she responded, "No, not even Yugo-sensei knew about this. This is the first time we've ever seen his sword transform or fight at that level. I wonder what else he can do." Naruto jumped into the air and gave the man who had witnessed him hover in midair and extend his hand a sly smile. A blue orb formed in Naruto's palm as he chanted, confusing his opponent. "Ye Lord, mask of flesh and bone, flutter of wings, ye who bears the name of man. Truth and temperance, upon this sinless wall of dreams unleash but slightly the wrath of your claws." Hado number 33. Sokatsui, blue fire, crashed down, out of his hand. A burst of what looked like blue fire rushed quickly in Zabuza's direction. Zabuza slammed his palms into the water and exclaimed, "Shit," as a shield. A wall of water rose around him in Sweden. Suijinheki, water release. Water encampment wall. Another explosion occurred as the Kido spell made contact, causing tiny waves to rise from the impact. Back on the boiling water, Naruto landed. After performing a series of hand seals at Jonin level speeds, Zabuza emerged from the water and came to a halt at the bird seal. The water rose around Zabuza and took the shape of a water dragon, which roared and rose toward its victim. "Let's see how you handle this." Sweden. Suiryuden, water release, water dragon bullet. A translucent barrier that took the shape of a large rectangular wall appeared in front of Naruto as he countered, gladly. Bakudo number 81. Danku, splitting void. The attack dissipated and left no damage to the technique when it crashed into the barrier. At that moment, Naruto disappeared and reappeared behind the man with Injetsu lifted into the air. Zabuza said, "Is that a Kekai Jutsu, barrier technique? I've never seen one like that." Spirit energy began to assemble around the blade and glow silver white, signaling, "It's over Zabuza." He exclaimed, "Getsuga Tensho, Moonfang Heaven Piercer," and swung his blade downward, sending what seemed to be a wave of energy skyward toward a stunned Zabuza, who raised his blade to deflect the blow. It was a poor move on his part because the wave widened and broke Zabuza's blade, sending him flying through the forest while screaming as the attack created a blast radius all over the forest. When they saw the destructive attack, Yugo, Kurenai, Makoto, Hinata, Yakumo, Sai, Shino, and Tazuna all had bug eyes and thought of only one thing. Damn. Right now, the blonde Shinigami was making his way through the devastation he had unleashed with the Getsuga Tensho. Naruto muttered to himself, "I think I should have held back more on that attack. Nevertheless, he had to concede that facing a swordsman of Zabuza's skill level was exhilarating. Kenpachi might have been influenced by his thirst and love of battle, and he had to admit that it was thrilling to take on stronger opponents. If he hadn't been on a mission to protect the client, he might have challenged Zabuza to a duel. The people who witnessed the attack were in awe, but Yugo was the most affected. She was wondering where he got such a weapon because she had never seen such a blade or an attack of that size in her life. Sai was silent and wide-eyed. Kurenai's mouth fell open, and Shino's eyebrows shot up into his head. Chibi versions of Hinata, Yakumo, and Mikoto were squealing about Naruto's strength and coolness, and they had stars in their eyes and mindscapes. Dear Kami, that was one hell of a battle. I'm so glad I got that Gaki as my hired protection, Tazuna replied. Zabuza, on the other hand, was in a world of agony while he lay against a tree. The majority of his sword was gone, and he had slash marks on his arms and legs in addition to a grotesque-looking gash that ran from his left shoulder to his right thigh. The same gash Grimmjow had after being struck by Ichigo's Getsuga Tenshou. He coughed up a lot of blood and said, "Yuga, what an attacker! Had I not used my blade, I would have lost half of my body." When he heard footsteps, he looked up to see Naruto approaching him, his hand in his pocket and his sword balanced on his shoulders. The blonde smirked as he jokingly said, "Hey, I can't believe I'm about to get taken out by a recently graduating genin. Karma must really hate me." Naruto pointed the cleaver-like weapon at Zabuza's throat and said, "Don't sell yourself short, Momochi. You're the first foreign ninja to ever see my blade in this form or withstand my Getsuga Tensho, even though that wasn't its full strength." The sunlight reflected off the silver-edged blade as Naruto raised it into the air, saying, "It's a shame I have to kill you. It would have been nice to have a rematch with you. Sayonara. May Kami have mercy on your soul." He was about to sever Zabuza's head with the blade when his body jerked to the left and right before collapsing onto the ground, where he remained still. Wondering what had happened, Naruto blinked and saw that the man had two senbon in his neck. A soothing yet melodic voice said, "Thank you for weakening him enough for me to finish him off." When Naruto looked up, he saw a female Kiri hunter nin standing atop a tree. She was dressed as a Kiri hunter and wore a mask that resembled an ANBU, with slits for eyes and a mist symbol on it. The Kirin nodded when Naruto asked, "You're a hunter nin, correct?" She shunshuns next to Zabuza's motionless form and rests his limp body on her shoulders along with his ruined sword, saying, "Yes. I have been hunting this man for a while now, and thanks to you and your group I've finally got him." She failed to notice the gleam in Naruto's eyes as the blonde stepped forward, saying, "Now all I have to do is destroy the body in order to keep the secrets from my village from being discovered." With a cheerful yet frightening tone, Naruto questioned, "Really? Then you won't mind if I remove his head in order to gain the bounty on his head, then would you, Hunter.san?" Naruto noticed the Kiri nin tensing up. The Hunter.nin stiffened as she prepared to defend Zabuza and herself simultaneously. "I can smell his scent on you, all right, so I should kill you both," he said gravely. Naruto put his blade down and concluded, "But I'm gonna let you two go for now." She was perplexed by this behavior and questioned why he hadn't attacked her earlier. She questioned the blonde hybrid, whose smile widened. "You're letting us go? Why?" "Because I'm not satisfied with the fight I had with your mentor, so when he wakes up, let him know that if he wants a rematch then we'll settle it at the bridge once he fully recovers. Injetsu here wasn't very satisfied with our fight earlier, and trust me, this damn sword can be very picky when it comes to his opponents." He spoke with a bit of annoyance as he trembled. She laughed when Naruto said, "So you might want to leave before my squad gets here. Oh, and tell that jerk once he wakes up he owes me a new hat." She performed a one-handed ram seal and disappeared in a whirlpool of wind and mist. "I'll be sure to relay the message to him. Until then." Following their departure via Shunshin, Yugo and Kurenai materialized in front of Naruto, who took a moment to survey the area. "If you're wondering, he got away with some help before I could finish him off, but due to my last attack it'll take him at least a week or two to fully heal," he responded as he supported Injetsu. Yugo questioned the blonde Shinigami. "He got away? Who was it that helped him?" As the other genin and the bridge builder headed to the same spot, he responded, "A female portraying herself as a Kiri hunter ninja." With a drop of sweat from the final Uzumaki, Namikaze, Yakumo, Kurama, and Hinata were now at Naruto's side, checking him for any injuries. He told them, "Girls, I'm fine. Just a little exhausted." However, Mikoto severely twisted his ear, and Yakumo pinched and pulled his cheek, causing him to scream in agony. The two gave him a homicidal look when he asked, "Ouch. What was that for?" "For being crazy. Instead of facing that guy by yourself, you should have let our senseis deal with him," Yakumo fumed. He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and remarked, "Hey, I can't help it if I wanted to fight a swordsman of Zabuza's caliber. Blame my battle. Loving uncle for rubbing his influence on me." With his hat cut in half, Hinata approached him. He sighed and his face went blank for a few minutes as she held the hat in front of him and said, "Anyo Naruto.kun your hat." He muttered, vowing to exact revenge for the hat his adoptive father had given him. "Don't worry Hinata, I can get it fixed, but I'm going to kick that Tami's ass so hard the next time we encounter him." With Haku and Zabuza, Zabuza yelled, "Damn it Haku, get these damn needles out of my neck already." He detested the fact that Haku had to employ this strategy to free him from his adversaries and that it took her so long to do so. With a blush on her face and a picture of Naruto in her head, she apologized, saying, "Sorry Zabuza. Sama. If I hadn't, then that blonde would have finished you off." She couldn't help but admit that he was Kudya no, he was so handsome. When the demon of the mist noticed this, his forehead furrowed in frustration. He muttered to himself, "Great, just great, now she's got a crush on the damn kid. That kid was no amateur with that sword and I highly doubt he was fighting me at his fullest. And that sword somehow it transformed and took on a new form, but that feeling it was like the sword was alive, like Kisami's Samahata, if not more sentient, and like it was an actual extension of him. I've heard rumors about such swords, but not to the extent, or level that one was at. Something tells me that sword has yet to reveal its true potential." Zabuza told his proto-copyright ga copyright. The house of Tazuna. Despite the current state of poverty in the nation, Naruto thought the old man's house was quite nice, as a home should be with a family. In addition to her son and Tazuna's grandson Inari, Tazuna's only daughter Tsunami welcomed everyone into the house and thanked them all for saving her father from Zabuza. When the child claimed that they would all perish and that they couldn't defeat Gato, he walked around glowering and brooding like a certain Uchiha. Naruto was so irritated by the boy's antics that he chose to ignore them and carry out his duties, which included watching the old man on the bridge or escorting Tsunami to the store to get food, while Yugo would patrol the village every day, switching places with Kurenai and allowing their students to participate, but only in pairs, while the others kept an eye on the man's house. Wave Country, a unfinished bridge, as he observed the elderly man collaborating with the construction team to complete as much of the bridge as possible before the end of the week. Naruto watched Tazuna intently from his vantage point, keeping a watchful eye out for any suspicious individuals attempting to pry. The day had gone smoothly so far, but Naruto wasn't going to be careless and made sure Tazuna felt as though he had a guardian angel keeping watch over him. Then he saw one of the men conversing with his employees. The bridge builder became even more irate when a man on the bridge who was assisting Tazuna with the construction said, "I'm sorry, Tazuna, but I can't do this anymore. I'm putting my family in danger just by talking to you." Tazuna, who was in the other man's face and prepared to kick the younger man's ass off the bridge, said, "So you're going to leave out of fear of Gato? Knowing that he'll hurt your family because you're here helping me fight him? What kind of cowardly bullshit is that?" The terrified man objected, Tazuna, listen But Tazuna interrupted him and wasn't tactful. "No, you listen. Gato is going to bleed our country dry whether we try to fight or not, and I am not about to let us suffer at the hands of that pig anymore. You want Gato to send his goons to your homes, day after day, week after week, and bleed what little resources you have left to feed your family. What happens when the day comes when you can't pay Gato money? What do you think he'll take? Or rather, who will he take just to make you suffer? Your family?" Tazuna responded because he wanted this individual to be afraid what would occur if Gato prevailed and they lost this fight. The man attempted to say, I know Tazuna, it's just." But Naruto interrupted him with a severe expression. As the worker frowned at him, Naruto said, "You heard the man, get lost. If you're going to go making bullshit excuses because you fear Gato, then we don't need deadweight on this bridge." He shot back, "And what would you know, kid?" Only to be met with a glare so intense it seemed like it could shatter a diamond. "What I know is that Tazuna-san as well as the workers who are actually with him are putting their lives on the line, damning the consequences because they believe that this bridge will free them from Gato's tyranny, and the last thing they need is some spineless loser killing what small form of hope they have left just because said person is afraid of some midget in a suit. Get lost." Naruto indicated the path to the town as the individual bowed his head in shame and left. While back in Konoha, Shikamaru sneezed as he continued to watch the clouds, only to have Ino elbow him in the chest and tell him to get off his lazy ass and start training. "Thanks Naruto, but now I'm down another worker. Kami, this is becoming troublesome," he muttered. After creating a few dozen copies, Naruto exclaimed, "Hama, maybe I can solve this issue, Shadow Clone Jutsu," and they were all smiling. Tazuna poked one of the copies and jumped back a little in surprise when he saw that it felt real. Okay. Either you just did that for real or my eyes are suffering from drinking too much, he thought. Naruto saw Tazuna's eyes widen in shock before he smiled maniacally. It's a highly advanced clone jutsu, which allows me to create several copies of myself like the water clone jutsu that Zabuza used. Only these send whatever they know to the original when they dispel into a puff of smoke, and can do anything you need help with like a normal person can. Thank you, my boy. You just made our hopes in liberating ourselves from Gato rise to a level we haven't had in a long time, Tazuna exclaimed with joy. Since his clones would complete the task with ease, Naruto said, glad I could help. Just point to where you need a number of my guys to go, what to do, and they will do whatever you need done. Thanks again, kid, Tazuna said, guiding the clones, who dutifully followed his instructions. As he returned to sentry duty, Naruto said, anytime. He also made sure the clones watched over the elderly man. Afterwards, with Yugoa, Makoto and Yakumo were practicing their kenjutsu katas with Bakens. Naruto was helping Hinata with her version of the gentle fist style, while Kurenai was assisting Shino and Sai by putting them through genjutsu simulations where they would need to use their tracking abilities to detect and subdue her. Since the style was based on the person using their chakra, not their fists, to damage the person's internal organs or tenketsu points, the blonde was able to easily avoid and block her strikes by coating his chakra a millimeter close to his body. Wearing black trousers and sandals, Hinata wore a sleeveless purple shirt that did little to cover her figure, which was appropriate for a 14-year-old girl. She tried to thrust her palm forward in a stabbing position, but Naruto blocked it with a chakra-coated hand, grabbed her wrist, and used his leg to trip the back of her heel and knock her to the ground. Naruto then twisted his body and spun on his heel as she tried to deliver a palm strike to the middle of his chest, causing her to skid forward before turning around and performing a reversal roundhouse kick that he ducked from. Astonished by the movement, Hinata collapses onto her back. He straddled her waist and put his hands around her wrists, keeping them spread apart, pinning her to the ground before she could attempt to rise. She looked up at a smirking Naruto as her chest rose and fell as her Byakugan deactivated and she began to pant. Not bad, Hinata. Your attack pattern has improved greatly. Those last couple of hits would have actually done some real damage had I not used the chakra armor trick. Hinata grinned at her crush and blushed a little at the compliment. She blushed from the position they were in and said, thanks Naruto-kun. Buddha, do you think you can let me up now? Naruto laughed at this and pulled her back up onto her feet. However, she stumbled forward again and was caught by Naruto before their eyes widened because their lips had touched. In her mindscape, the Hyuga cried out, oh my Kami, I'm kissing Naruto, I'm kissing Naruto. Kun. They stood there for a few seconds before she finally jolted out of her daze and withered away, her face flushed. Her words were cut off when his index finger touched her lips. N. Naruto.kun, I'm sorry, it was an accident, I swear. She saw a smile on his face and blinked a couple of times. He told her, it's okay, Hinata, I'm not mad, knowing that she, Yakumo, and Makoto all had a serious crush on him but didn't let it ruin their friendship or their ability to work together as future kunoichi. Her eyes widened in surprise as he put his arms around her waist and drew her close to his body. Matter of fact, let me return the gesture. He finished that sentence by kissing her lip again. She closed her eyes and put her arms around his neck. They made out passionately for a few seconds before they parted to allow their lungs to fill with air. Hinata chuckled at the stunned look on her face and said only, wow. Naruto simply smiled when she said, you do know Yakumo and Makoto are gonna be irked when they find out that I was the first one to get a real kiss from you, right? She giggled and they parted ways after he joked, maybe, but you're not the one who has to worry about them beating the tar out of you, Haim. Come on, let's head back. The following day, Haku was gathering herbs in a forest to make the healing concoction that would hasten her mentor's recovery. Her eyes widened at what she saw after she had put some herbs in a basket and continued to walk through the forest. The ground was covered in small craters and slash marks, and a number of trees had been chopped down or had scorch marks on them. Before she saw a 14-year-old blonde lying against a tree with one of his swords resting against his shoulder and the other lying next to him, she wondered, who could have done this? Slowly, she walked up to Naruto's motionless form and asked, it's him, but what is he doing in the middle of the forest alone? She carefully reaches out to him while kneeling down when she is close enough. She gasped in shock as a hand suddenly grabbed her wrist. Naruto opened his eyes slowly and met Haku's brown eyes directly. The blonde calmly said, hello there, Hunter.nin. Haku's eyes widened a bit, then he let go of her wrist, yawned, and grabbed his other Zanpakuto, strapping it to his back while eliciting a puzzled expression from him. Since he was aware that she was a phony hunter ninja who had saved Zabuza and then released them, she questioned, "I thought you were going to kill me?" She blushed slightly as he asked, "And why would I want to kill someone as pretty as you?" He then strapped ninjutsu to his belt and extended his hand. After taking it, she stands up again, and Naruto sees the basket she is holding. Haku nodded when he asked, "I take it you're gathering healing herbs for Zabuza, correct?" He chuckles as she responds, "Yes I am. That attack you used left him in bad shape and now is sporting a scar from it." Haku laughed as Naruto joked, "Well, that was payback for when he killed my hat," he said to Haku, who was now giggling a little at Zabuza's moniker. "So do you need any help in gathering herbs for no brows?" She brushed a lock of hair back and replied, "No, I think I have enough to get him back in shape. But if I may ask, why are you so intent on fighting Zabuza? Sama? Is it because we're trying to kill your client?" "That a question I should be asking you." She responded, "Haku, my name is Haku." "Well then Haku. Chan," he said in a harsh tone that caused her to wince and turn away in sorrow. "How did you of all people get mixed up with a guy like Gato? Don't you know what that man is doing to this country?" she asked, her face turning pink at the suffix. While Naruto merely shook his head in disappointment, she clarified, "Yes, I do, but we have no other choice. Zabuza Sama is a missing. Nin wanted in Kiri for the assassination attempt on the Mizukage, and we've been on the run ever since. Gato is paying us enough that'll help him overthrow the man and restore Kiri to its former glory. I know all about the bloodline purge in that place, but that doesn't give you or him the right to destroy the only person that can save this country. Gato's been bleeding this place dry, and all he cares about is power and money and will gain it no matter what, and from my point of view, you're both acting no better than him or the Mizukage," he said with a stern tone. Haku, however, looks shamefully at the ground because she knows what they were doing was wrong. "And as for Gato, do you seriously think he would pay you after you complete your mission? I know how guys like Gato operates, and he'll wait until the last second when everyone's too tired to fight back and will not only kill Tazuna, but his family as well, and I'm pretty sure you know what he'll do to the females, and I'll be damned if I let him touch my teammates or sensei." She turned to him and observed the look that filled his eyes. Naruto nodded in response to Haku's question, "They're precious to you, aren't they?" Before meeting her eyes, he replied, "Yes, they are, and I'd die for them if it meant that they would live to see another day. You know they say the eyes are the gateway to someone's soul. Your eyes remind of the kind I used to have." However, this perplexed Haku, who cocked her head slightly to the side. She questioned, "What do you mean?" Haku's eyes widened in surprise as he responded, "Sadness, confusion, anger, the desire to be acknowledged, and in some form happiness. They're the same eyes I used to have when I was younger. I was blamed and hated for something that was out of my control since the day I was born, and spent 7 years of my life going through hell on earth until I was saved by 4 people who saw me for me and gave me what I always wanted, a family," he replied, "and from my point of view Zabuza is someone precious to you as well." With resolve in her eyes, she replied, "Yes, he is, and I would give my life for him." Naruto lets out a sorrowful sigh and turns back to face her. "So you're really gonna face him in another match? To the death?" he asks. With that, Naruto left the forest, leaving a sad Haku with her thoughts. "I'm afraid so, Haku. Chan, I can understand yours and Zabuza's position, but I will not allow those who are suffering under Gato's rule to go through this. I wish we weren't enemies, but this is how it is, I'm afraid." The unfinished bridge. Week's end as anticipated, Team 6 and Kurenai were on the bridge, along with Zabuza and Haku in her Hunter.nin attire. While said bridge builder was with Yugo and her team, the Genjutsu mistress had left her team behind with Tazuna's daughter and grandson in case Gato tried to have his thugs try to kidnap them and use them against the man. The man growled at Naruto's taunting question, "Hey, no brows, did you miss me?" because he was sensitive about his eyebrows. As Yugo reached for the hilt of her blade, Kurenai was ready to draw a kunai, saying, "Don't even consider it, this is between me and the brat. You got lucky the last time we fought, so I won't be underestimating you this time. Watch it, brat." He retaliated angrily against the two kunoichi. Yugo put her hand around her hilt and said, "Sorry Zabuza, but you're dealing with us." "Stop, Yugo. Sensei, he's right. This is a sword duel between me and him, and I know you of all people know what that means when two swordsmen face each other in a duel," Naruto exclaimed, startling the female Kenjutsu user. Yugo's eyes widened in surprise before they returned to normal, and she nodded before removing her hand from her blade. She shocked Kurenai by backing away and responding, "Fine. But Yugo, we can't." Yugo explained to her fellow comrade, who was shocked but let out a sigh of defeat and nodded before backing away as well. That, Kurenai. This is a duel between swordsmen not ninja, and if we intervene, Naruto not only will be disgraced as a fellow swordsman but will be forced to forfeit his life automatically. Yakumo and Mikoto were also more concerned about Naruto, but their goal was to protect Tazuna. Both of them watched the phony hunter.nin closely and thought, be careful Naruto.kun. Haku, please don't get involved in this altercation. Zabuza told the girl, who nodded silently but was struggling with herself, that even if he died in the battle, she would not be able to break up the fight because of Zabuza's pride as a swordsman. Here are the rules. Kid. No ninjutsu or genjutsu, just our kenjutsu and taijutsu are allowed, Zabuza said, crouching down and placing his hand in the hilt of his cleaver. Like sword, as Naruto pulled his zanpakuto from the sheath and ninjutsu transformed into its shikai state. The two swordsmen stood in their respective stances, waiting for the last man standing to make the first move. Naruto nods, and all playfulness disappears from his eyes. The bridge builder felt a drop of sweat trickle down his forehead, down to his chin, and then down to the floor, while everyone else at the scene remained silent. Drip. The two swordsmen then vanished with their unadulterated speed, and then clang. As the two swordsmen battled for supremacy and strength, both blades swung and ground against one another. Damn! How strong he is for his age! As Zabuza attempted to apply more force from his muscles to his blade, he was struck by Naruto's ability to maintain his balance in spite of their disparate sizes. As they both break the stalemate and start a vicious kenjutsu match, Naruto thought, hey, this is going to be fun. Now I know why Uncle Zaraki loves to duel so much. Yugo couldn't help but be in awe of the battle she was seeing. Naruto's kenjutsu was flawless, and no attack was wasted because the majority of them were aimed at the Demon of the Mist, who would either counter Zabuza's attack or use his quick reflexes and speed to avoid the man's blows. What did you teach this child, my Kami Yugo? The former Anbu captain was asked by an astonished Kurenai. He didn't learn anything like this from me. Kurenai's eyes widened. She had heard about the 4 people who adopted Naruto and had even seen him occasionally with a dark-skinned, purple-haired woman who appeared to be his foster mother. She had even seen them practicing taijutsu in open fields or playing a game called flash tag, where they would zip across the field like blurs, and it appeared as though Naruto was trying to tag Yoruichi. Back at the fight, Naruto dodges the cleaver, like sword that swings over his head and swipes at the man's torso. Zabuza barely avoids the blow, gets nicked by the blade's tip, and lets out a painful grunt as blood spurts from the wound. You're a good brat. Could you tell me who taught you how to wield a sword? There aren't many swordsmen in Konoha, Zabuza pondered, because the only swordsmen who ever came from the village were Kushina Uzumaki, the blonde sensei, a sickly Jonin, and the blonde sensei. Her sword skills made the other ninjas appear inexperienced, and she was the only one who could actually compete with her husband. Since Naruto was in terms of an Uzumaki, it was possible that he inherited his mother's blade skills. Though the main slave driver who taught me kenjutsu was my uncle, believe me when I say that is one man you don't want to go all out against because he'll reduce you to nothing but a smear on the ground. Naruto smiled at Zabuza and said, if I told you, I doubt you'd believe me, and if you did believe me then you would shit your pants. He was observing his opponent's slightly injured body, which was covered in cuts, with blood dripping from the wounds, and the missing nin was being pushed back. Zabuza runs at Naruto with a horizontal slash once more, but Naruto runs aside and then kicks the man in the ribs with a roundhouse kick, breaking some of them. Zabuza heard the cracking sounds of his bones and coughed up blood as he skidded backwards. Blood sprayed across the air, and before the group were the frozen forms of Naruto and Zabuza, with Naruto crouching down with his blade in a downward position with blood dripping from it and his hair shadowing his face, while Zabuza's blade was still upwards. His senses told him to look up as he saw Naruto descend towards him from the air, with Injetsu raised over his head and the blonde swinging it down while Zabuza swung his blade upwards. Both of them stayed that way for a few seconds before Zabuza said, "Hey, not bad Kita, not bad at all." His blade broke off and snapped in half, embedding the ground as a lot of blood splattered across the ground and shot out from his left shoulder to his hip. The man staggered backwards before falling forward but landing on one knee as blood dripped onto the bridge's surface. On the other hand, Naruto got up and took off his jacket, even though he had a slash across his arm that was bleeding a little, but he thought it was nothing compared to the wounds he had received from Zaraki. He then approached the man with his head down, wiped the blood from Injetsu, and raised his blade, just like he had done when they first fought in the forest, saying, "Sorry Zabuza, but this is the end for you." He then brought his blade down and ended the man, but stopped when Haku appeared in front of him, her arms spread wide, and she stared at the silver edge of the blade that was meant to kill her father and master. The ice user merely shook her head, and Naruto said, "Move, Haku, I don't want to kill you just to get to Zabuza." Realizing that Haku had resisted him, he had to give her credit for keeping herself in place in the face of certain death. As she takes off her mask, Haku declares, "No, he is precious to me and I will defend Zabuza Sama with my life." Naruto can see the truth in her words because he looks into her eyes and sees no fear of death. Zabuza stumbled to his feet, looking pale from the blood loss, and said, Haku, stop it. You're not gonna take the fall for me, especially since you have your whole life to live," he said. "Zabuza Sama?" As he walked around her and put his hands on her shoulders while staring her in the eye, she looked at him in astonishment, and even more so, said Haku. He, and I all know that the kid has me completely enamored. Even if I could use water jutsus to escape with your assistance right now, he would still kill me and take my head while the others outnumber you and pin you down. He hit me fatally, and I'm bleeding out pretty badly. In addition, the Namikaze here destroyed my sword at the hilt." As Zabuza watched Haku cry and her lips tremble before she laid her face on his bleeding chest, he explained, "By the rules that are the standard for every swordsman worth their honor and blade, I have to accept my death at his sword since he is the victor. No. There must be another way, right? Zabuza Sama, please." Haku, who was now crying, begged him not to leave her alone. Naruto watched the scene in front of him and felt bad about what he had to do, but there was nothing he could do about it. "I have no honor as a swordsman and will be referred to as a disgrace to the profession if I violate the swordsman code, Haku." Haku looks up at him with teary eyes and some of his blood on her face and hair. "I may be many things, Haku, but that I am not, and will keep my honor as a swordsman in death despite my lifestyle as a ninja," he says. But before Zabuza could say another word, his eyes widened and he heard the whistling sound of multiple arrows being fired. He grabbed Haku and twirled her around in the direction he was in with his back to her before yelling in agony as multiple arrows pierced his back, causing everyone on the bridge to look surprised but Haku to look horrified. She let out a scream as the man stumbled, the bandages falling off his lower face, and he coughed up blood. What the devil? Before the mist cleared and Gato and an army of bandits appeared on the other side of the bridge, Naruto pondered. As several of them held crossbows and smiled at the prospect of striking Zabuza, Tazuna muttered in horror, "Kami no." "Well, Zabuza, it appears that you and your little bitch didn't finish your mission, but it doesn't matter because I didn't plan to compensate you for your work. I only have to give these guys a small portion of what you demand for your foolish rebellion in Kiri, so why do that?" Naruto's eyes narrowed at the midget man, and he clenched the hilt of his blade as Gato said, laughing at the two, just as his group did. "This is the scum that made wave into what it was before." Then, as Kurenai and Yugo materialized in front of him in a combat stance, he muttered. Zabuza growled, Damn you Gato, you piece of Shida," as his wounds continued to weaken him. "But enough stalling, kill the old man, the blonde brat, and Zabuza, but keep the females alive," he said, glaring at the 5 women, Kurenai in particular. "I'm going to enjoy breaking them, especially the one with the red exotic eyes." The other 2 also scoffed at them, particularly at Kurenai and Yugo, who were now expressing murderous intent toward them, as did Makoto, who had her Sharingan activated, but not any more so than Naruto. "I think I'll turn her in the purple-haired one into my personal pets and maybe sell those 3 girls off to Kumo or Iwa after I'm done with them," the mother said. "Over my deathly body." Zabuza roared as his murderous intent skyrocketed over the fact that this man threatened to rape the closest thing he had to a daughter and, for some reason, felt some of his strength return before pushing Haku aside, picking up what was left of his sword, and rushing after Gato and the other thug with the intention of ending their lives, with Gato as his prey and the man pushing his way through his men, telling them to kill Zabuza. "Kurenai, take down any stragglers that come around us while I assist Naruto and Zabuza." Naruto followed suit, his eyes turning cold and murderous as he took off. Blood, limbs, and entrails began to litter the bridge as the thugs tried to fight back or flee, and Kurenai killed any that were still alive with a kunai and shuriken. Yugo gave the order as she hurried off to assist her student, who was currently killing thugs left and right, just like Zabuza. Despite being hit by a few weapons, Zabuza's blade regenerated slightly from the iron in his slain victim's blood, but it didn't matter because his primary target was Gato. The man watched the massacre in horror and fear before he saw Zabuza leave the crowd. "Stop him, he must end," as Naruto cut a thug in half from the neck down and then delivered a vicious right hook to another face, whose head exploded into skull and brain matter. He screamed out, but it was inevitable. I'm going to tear you to pieces with my bare hands instead of using my blade to take you down. The insane Zanbatu wielder cursed as he threw aside his trust sword and ran after the man who attempted to reach his boat but was stopped because of a red aura that paralyzed his body. The next thing he knew, Zabuza was on him, grabbing the man by the collar and dragging him over the bridge. With no other option, Gato tries to plead for forgiveness, saying, "Please let me go." He tried to reason with the ripped up Kirinin, who just snarled at him, saying, I'll pay you double the amount I promised back then. You poor excuse of a man, stop talking. When I first saw you, I should have killed you and taken everything you had worked so hard to earn. I can put up with you threatening to kill me, but you went too far when you tried to hurt not just someone I value but also my closest relative, a daughter. His fist returned, channeling as much chakra as he could before slamming it into Gato's skull and destroying half of the man's skull before his body fell off the bridge into the water where sharks would eat his remains. He roared as he squeezed the man's throat and she heard him gurgle and struggled to pry his hands off. Haku, on the other hand, heard him and felt joy soar in her heart when she heard him refer to her as his daughter rather than a tool. She turns to see Zabuza staggering towards Haku over the gory scene as Yugo dispatches one of the remaining thugs. He reached out to her and whispered, H. Hakua, before he fell to his knees and hit the ground face first, hearing her yell his name and run towards him. As Naruto hovered over his form, one thug was flung to the ground, trembling in terror. Naruto pointed the tip of his blade at the thug's throat and threatened, "Tell me where Gato's manor is and I'll consider letting you live." He stumbled out, "Okay, I'll talk. It's several miles on a private island he owned near Wave Country, that's all I know." Naruto's eye grinned, then used ninjutsu to force him through his skull before throwing him over the bridge. Then Naruto looks over and sees Haku holding the man in her arms while crying over Zabuza's tumbling form. She sobbed as tears streamed from her eyes onto his face, saying, Please don't leave me too. Son, I need you. What am I supposed to do without you? I'll be alone again. Before he saw Naruto come toward him with his sword sheathed and a pitying expression on his face, Zabuza kept his half-lidded eyes on her sobbing form. Naruto nodded in response to the man's request. "You're Naruto, correct?" he asked the blonde, who nodded. "Could you do me one favor and take Haku back with you to your village and give her the life that I could not as form of retribution to our fight being interrupted?" As the man coughed up blood and laughed feebly, he replied, "Yes, I will. It's the least I can do for taking away the only person she had left in this world." The light began to fade, and he gave Haku one final glance before saying, "Hey, you're too damn modest. Don't feel bad, kid. You did what you had to in order to protect your client and your teammates. It is a part of the shinobi lifestyle." He lifted his arm feebly and rubbed her face, then wiped away some of her tears and gave her a feeble smile. His final words before his arm went limp, ending Zabuza Momochi's life, were, "Live on Masumi, daughter." As she sobbed into Naruto's chest, he put his arms around her and gently assisted her in standing up. He comfortingly rubbed the girl's back and reassured her, "Don't worry, Haku-chan, I'm here for you."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.